Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Philippines family. Carol and Benoa met in 2009 while working at the same bank, where Benoa was the manager and Carol was an employee. At that time, Carol was going through a tough divorce. Benoa, who had also been married before, quickly became her love at first sight, and they began a passionate romance that surprised everyone around them. Many believed their relationship was just a fleeting affair, but they proved them wrong. Their feelings deepened, and they decided to officially marry. Carol remarried in April 2012, and this marriage appeared genuinely happy. The couple seemed deeply in love, enjoyed being sociable, and loved hosting parties. They even planned a dream trip to Tenerife for their second wedding anniversary, but sadly, that plan would never materialize. Tragically, just before their trip, both Carol and Benoa were killed. At the time of their deaths, they did not have children of their own. But they are planning to have children soon. Therefore, Carol spent a lot of time with Steban, the son of friends, also bring Carol's godson, showering him with gifts and affection. Steban was a calm, sweet, and well-mannered child who appreciated their kindness. The couple Carol and Benoa loved hosting gatherings for their family and friends, and on one such occasion, they decided to Steban along. This decision led Steban to the innocent child becoming a victim of a horrific crime. On April 18, 2014, gunshots were heard near a Filipino family's home. Eyewitnesses quickly contacted the police. At around 10:15 p.m., an inspector was patrolling nearby when he received the call and rushed to the scene. He parked slightly away from the house and approached cautiously, using tactical techniques from his police training. He kept his weapon ready, suspecting that the shooter might still be there, but it turned out that the attackers had already fled. When arrived, the officer was taken aback by the amount of blood around Carol and Benoa's cars. It resembled a slaughterhouse. At that moment, all three victims were still alive. The officer first attended to the child Steban, who was lying on the ground with a severe gunshot wound to the head. He immediately called for assistance and requested an ambulance. The wait for the medics felt like an eternity, but they arrived in time to provide first aid. Unfortunately, despite their efforts, 9-year-old Steban died shortly after reaching the hospital. After that, the doctors turned there to Carol. Although she was conscious, she had lost a big amount of blood and was in serious condition. She was able to speak to the police and described how the attacker first approached her husband, Benoa. Just after that, gunshots were fired. The inspector asked Carol if she recognized the attacker, but she replied no and then lost consciousness. Meanwhile, Benoa showed almost no signs of life and was unconscious. He was placed in an ambulance along with Carol, with hopes of being saved at the medical center. Unfortunately, he died en route. Carol was the only victim who arrived at the hospital alive. She was rushed into surgery, and throughout the night, the surgeons worked tirelessly to save her, but their efforts were in vain. Carol's family was informed about the incident, and her parents and sisters were left in shock, anxiously waiting and unsure if Carol would survive. In the end, they lost her. Law enforcement officers were interviewing everyone who have witnessed the shooting. The first witness was a neighbor who saw a suspicious woman running away from the scene through his window. She was petite and slender, wearing a dark short dress. After the shooting, she quickly crossed the road and disappeared. Another witness, a former Marine, also looked out when the shooting occurred. The whole incident happened in just a few seconds before the attacker fled. He confirmed that the shooter was a woman. This neighbor's vantage point allowed him to see her getting into a car and driving away with her headlights off. He was able to provide a description of the car. There was limited information available, as there were no details regarding the license plates, and the model and color of the car could only be estimated. The police couldn't identify the shooter because there were no clear images of her face or any distinguishing features. Local residents were troubled by the event. Everyone was shocked by the tragedy, and neighbors of Carol who had CCTV cameras willingly gave the police full access to their footage. This led to the discovery of a suspicious dark sedan that parked away from Carol's home about half an hour before they left at 9:48 p.m. Just 2 minutes after the attack, this dark sedan drove away with a woman inside. The description matched the vehicle that the suspect used to flee the scene. Unfortunately, all video footage did not show the license plates or any specific details about the car. It was only through meticulous analysis of the video that the police identified the car model as a BMW 5 Series. The crimes were clearly recorded on tape. Benoit was shot 3 times, and 3 additional shots were meant for Carol, while the child Stebbins suffered a single gunshot wound to the head. The shooter used a 9mm pistol and aimed primarily at the upper body, leaving little chance for survival. Once investigators discovered that Benoit had recognized the shooter, they began to thoroughly examine his contacts to identify potential suspects. Detectives analyzed Benoit's computer and reviewed all communication methods, including the messaging apps used by he. The police gradually discovered that Benoit was not the ideal husband he appeared to be. Behind the facade of a perfect marriage lay several troubling truths. Benoit, who held a prominent position at the bank, frequently pursued women and used his authority to flirt with them. Multiple bank employees reported his behavior. One witness, Sandra Chundell, came to the bank in 2013 seeking a job. After a brief introduction, the manager, Benoit, invited her to his office. Sandra described feeling very uncomfortable being alone with him. He acted like a predator, rarely making eye contact and instead focusing on her neckline, which made her feel embarrassed. It seemed as if he was undressing her with his eyes. Although Benoit is seen as a loving family man, but he had regular affairs, engaging in cheating on his wife frequently rather than infrequently. This thing led to a long list of potential suspects, including his co-workers and the husbands of the women he had affairs with. However, witness accounts pointed to a woman being involved in the shooting, which drew immediate attention from investigators. Law enforcement recognized that there were many who might bear a grudge against Benoit, which meant they had a week's worth of interviews and investigations ahead of them. Benoit has a strong personality. He often speaks bluntly and is quite strict, which makes some people feel uncomfortable and stay away from him. Despite this, he is a valued member of the workplace and a great manager. Investigations into bank employees provided the police with no new leads. The next theory considered was that of murder linked to workplace issues. By examining Benoit's transactions, the police identified a couple of suspects who had strong motives for murder. While investigating Benoit's computer, the police discovered notes about Anna Maria Troiano. She married Trojan at a young age, and their marriage was initially strong. However, in 2002, they encountered serious problems when her husband, Trojan, lost his job due to the metallurgical plant's closure. At that time, they already had children, and the family's financial difficulty deeply affected him, making it difficult for him to support the household. Consequently, Anna decided to take on a different role and start her own business. Anna opened a hair salon and quickly became popular with the locals, bringing in a good income for her family. Meanwhile, Trojan took on the role of a stay-at-home dad, taking care of their children. He later joined Anna in their business and helped her grow it further. The hair salon was thriving, and the couple realized they needed more funds to expand. They envisioned a full-service beauty salon and wanted to hire other beauty professionals. They believed this would be a successful venture, but it required a significant investment for renting more space and buying new equipment and supplies. To secure the necessary funds, they approached the bank for a loan, the same bank where Benoit and Carol were employed. They spoke directly with Carol, who gave them a verbal agreement for a €175,000 loan. Anna and Trojan was eager to grow their business, so they quickly used a large portion of their own savings to rent a larger space. They were waiting for a loan from the bank, but at the last minute, Benoit discovered their situation and deemed Anna and her husband's business too risky for a loan. Benoit was strongly opposed to lending them money and refused their loan application. Unfortunately, Anna and Trojan had not yet signed a formal loan agreement, so their arrangement with the bank was only verbal. The bank manager, Benoit, acted within his rights and could deny the loan based on these circumstances, as Carol's verbal promise had no legal standing. Meanwhile, Anna and Trojan are having a lot of financial trouble after investing all their money into the business and desperately needed the loan. In response to their predicament, Anna and Trojan decided to sue the bank, even though they knew their chances of winning were slim. Ultimately, they lost the case, worsening their financial difficulties. They faced significant challenges due to ongoing pressure, leading them to lose everything. Their rush to pay rent resulted in a massive debt of €50,000. Although they rented a new space, they lacked the funds for renovations, repairs, and equipment, leaving the premises unused and without income. They also incurred hefty legal fees from hiring good lawyers. Unable to pay off their large debt all at once, they were forced to sell their house and move in with their parents. This situation causes constant conflicts between them, putting them at risk of divorce. Investigators believe that financial troubles and legal issues may have been the motive for the crime, as Anna and Trojan were desperate and destitute, so they may have wanted revenge. As a result, the police began to investigate them as potential suspects. They initially considered that the perpetrator might be a woman. However, Anna had a solid alibi. She was in another city at the time of the murder, therefore, she was immediately eliminated from the suspect list. Detectives then turned their attention to Anna's husband, Trojan. They discovered that Trojan had a criminal history involving violence. Additionally, he drove a BMW 5 Series, and older models of this car were spotted on CCTV footage near the house of Carol. The evidence against him continued to mount, especially when threats from he to Carol were found on her mobile phone, which were related to a bank's denial of a loan. Based on this information, a search warrant was issued for Trojan's family home. On May 13, 2014, 3 weeks after the murder of the Benoit family, police visited the home of Trojan's parents, where he was living. The officers searched the entire house and focused particularly on Trojan's computer. They discovered that 6 weeks prior to the murders, he had attempted to find the address of a Filipino individual on the internet, Benoit. This information, combined with other evidence, suggested that the murders were not accidental. Trojan had a motive. He had threatened and sought out the addresses of Benoit and Carol, those he blamed for his financial issues. As part of the investigation, the investigators needed to question Trojan directly. During the interrogation, he appeared calm and provided explanations for each inquiry. However, the investigators found him dishonest in his answers, so they could not release him, considering him the main suspect. Ultimately, Trojan was charged with illegal possession of a weapon, but at his parents' house, the police could not find the gun used in the murder. Trojan's wife, Anna, spoke up to defend him, claiming that his criminal acts were a thing of the past a long time ago. She explained that he had been young when he fell in with a bad crowd and, after spending 6 months in prison, decided to change his life. Over the past 13 to 14 years, Trojan had led an honest life, making it unfair to judge him solely based on a mistake from his youth. Anna stating that he could never have killed 3 people at once, especially a 9-year-old child, Steban. He loved his children deeply, and it was hard to believe that a good family man could shoot a child. He also maintained that he had an alibi for the time of the murder, which the police could not disprove during their initial interrogation. According to Trojan, He was in Germany visiting family on April 18, 2014, and he arrived around 10 p.m., which would clear him of any guilt since the attack occurred at approximately 10:30 p.m. Furthermore, witness testimony suggested that a woman was the actual shooter. This has complicated the investigation. Trojan, who was 192 centimeters tall and weighed around 130 kilograms, was unlikely to be confused with the small woman seen wearing a short dress. This thing led to Trojan exclusion from the list of suspects, resulting in his release. However, the investigation continued. Officers traveled to Stuttgart, Germany, under a court order where they met Mario Trojana, the brother of Trojan. Mario shared crucial information, revealing that Trojan had not arrived in Stuttgart until late Saturday evening, around 11:30 p.m., the day after the massacre of the Benoist family. He described Trojan as looking very tired and shabby. This new information shifted the direction of the investigation. It became clear that Trojan lacked an alibi, providing ample opportunity to commit the triple murder. 5 months after the violent attack on the Benoist family, Trojan was taken into custody by police and faced several additional interrogations. The investigators were determined to uncover the truth. Initially, Trojan claimed that he left home in the evening after arguing with his wife. He said he was going to Germany to visit his brother, Mario. However, during multiple interrogations, he changed his story. He stated that he intended to end his life due to various personal issues. While driving along a long country road, he claimed to have consumed a large amount of illegal substances. He then lost consciousness and only woke up around 5 o'clock in the morning. After regaining consciousness, he decided against end his life and set off to visit his brother Mario in Stuttgart. Trojan had a new alibi that allowed him to continue lying, but he inadvertently gave the police a clue. He drove a modern car equipped with a Wi-Fi module, which automatically connects to available networks. Investigators began reviewing footage from the security cameras of Benoist's neighbors. An officer noted that a BMW 5 Series, which the attacker used, had stopped near a gym. This gym offered free Wi-Fi, and records of all connections were maintained. This allowed them to verify whether the Trojan family's BMW was near Benoist's home during the time of the shooting. The car was actually recorded at this location at the time of the shooting. Trojan made a critical error by giving his clothes to the police for examination. When forensic experts searched his house, they discovered gunpowder residues on the clothing. It became clear that Trojan was responsible for the murders of family Benoist. The next step was to persuade the jury of his guilt. On September 10, 2014, Trojan was officially charged with triple premeditated murder. There was considerable confusion and deception surrounding the case. He continually altered his story in an attempt to evade responsibility. Investigators began to suspect that his wife, Anna, might also be involved, since witnesses reported seeing a woman at the crime scene. However, there was no evidence to prove Anna was guilty, so she was not charged. On February 6, 2017, Trojan stood trial before a jury. Relatives of Benoist's family, along with Steban's relatives, were present at the execution, joining together to demand justice. They sought to hold Trojan accountable for the lives he had taken. The prosecution outlined the crime. Trojan, furious Benoist and Carol due to his own financial troubles, decided to track down and kill the couple. When their child, Steban, saw his face, he murdered the boy to eliminate a witness. The prosecutor clarified that Carol had never met Trojan before. She only knew his wife, Anna, which is why she did not recognize him during the attack. The prosecutor argued that the witnesses who claimed to see a woman at the scene were mistaken and confused a passerby for the real killer. During the trial, relatives of Benoist and Carol spoke about they, describing them as kind, friendly people and are outstanding experts in their fields. Unfortunately, Carol's kindness may have led to tragedy. She tried to help the Trojan family by promising them financial support, but her husband, who was more experienced and cautious, thought it was too risky and refused to lend them money. While the situation was distressing for the Trojan family, it wasn't without options. They could have approached other banks for a loan or explored different solutions. Instead, they chose to retaliate by killing two bankers, Benoit and Carol, with Steban. During the hearing, the accused Trojan appeared with his face covered, a request made by his lawyer to uphold the presumption of innocence. Trojan showed a complete lack of understanding of the situation and maintained his innocence until the very end. His demeanor and confidence even seemed to sway the jury. His lawyers emphasized that he was a good father and could not possibly have shot another person's child, Steban. They also argued that the absence of a murder weapon, along with witness statements confirming the presence of women at the crime scene, made it impossible to accuse Trojan. It appeared that the jury was leaning towards acquittal. However, on the sixth day of the trial, crucial evidence emerged against Trojan. A video from his mobile phone was presented, which seemingly showed him accidentally capturing himself hiding the gun under a pillow. The fact that the gun was a rare model, linked to his criminal history, weighed heavily against him. Additionally, the gun left distinct traces of gunpowder that were identified as matching. This evidence contradicted his statements, shifting the case's momentum towards the prosecution. Trojan's lies ultimately became the critical turning point in the trial. The trial lasted 2 weeks, after which the jury was certain of Trojan's guilt. Trojan was convicted of 3 counts of premeditated murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The defendant has already appealed to both the Court of Cassation and the European Court of Human Rights, seeking release due to what he claims was an unjust verdict, but both appeals were denied. The case of Ilona Flint. On December 23, 2013, 22-year-old Ilona Flint finished her shift at a shopping center store, where she often worked late during the Christmas season. This night, she left work just after midnight, expecting her boyfriend to pick her up from the parking lot. However, he did not arrive and did not respond to her messages. Concerned, she reached out to her boyfriend's brother, whom she got along with well, and asked him for a ride home. He agreed to help her, but unfortunately, they never made it home. On that fateful night, a dangerous criminal chose to practice his murderous skills by targeting the Belvedere family. This decision led to a terrible tragedy. The Belvedere family was well respected and had a reputation for being good, honest, and crime-free. Ilona had just moved to San Diego, California, where she was lively, energetic, and determined. Love had blossomed between her and Gianni Belvedere, and they had announced their engagement shortly before the tragedy. They loved each other and were eager to start a family together. Gianni's parents had become very close to Ilona. They treated her like their own daughter, and they had a wonderful relationship from the very beginning. All of this contributed to their belief in a bright future for the couple. Not even their brightest dreams could protect them from the violent criminals of 2013. A shooting broke out in the parking lot of the Minville Shopping Center in San Diego. One of the store employees noticed a suspicious person and called the police. Before that, Ilona Flint frantically dialed 911, telling the dispatcher that a stranger was threatening her. The driver of the car she was in was her boyfriend's 2-year-old brother, Salvatore Belvedere. Suddenly, the call with Ilona was interrupted. The dispatcher sent patrol officers to the area to investigate. In just a few minutes, the patrol arrived at the incident scene. Inside the car, they found Ilona and Salvatore unconscious. Ilona was slumped in the front passenger seat, and police identified 2 gunshot wounds on her body, one in her chest and another in the back of her head, which was fatal. Despite brief tries to revive her, it became evident that Ilona would not wake up. Doctors later confirmed her death, noting that the assailant had shot both her and the driver while Ilona was on the phone. During the call with the dispatcher, no background noise or gunshots were heard. Police reviewed the call recording and interviewed the witness who reported the incident. She also did not hear any loud noises. As a result, police believe the attacker used a pistol with a silencer. The investigation confirmed that the assassin had a .22 caliber pistol. The boy, Salvatore, was in critical condition after being shot in the face, right between the eyes. When police arrived, he was still alive and was rushed to the hospital. Despite the doctor's efforts to save him, he fell into a coma and died 2 days later. This left the police without any valuable information from him. Forensic experts started by examining the vehicle where the Ilona and Salvatore were shot. Sadly, they found no evidence of a third person either inside or outside the car. They discovered that the vehicle in which Ilona and Salvatore were found belonged to Leonardo Belvedere, Salvatore's father. Police intended to inform the car owner about the tragic incident and also wanted to speak with Gianni, Ilona's new fiancé. However, they could not find Gianni at his home. Leonardo went to the shopping mall where the incident occurred and waited for news of Gianni. Leonardo was the first to notice that something was wrong. Gianni usually arrived at the mall early and waited for Ilona in the parking lot, so his absence caused concern. Leonardo tried to call him, but Gianni did not answer any calls or messages, which was completely unlike him. This unusual behavior prompted Leonardo to go looking for his son. The police issued a notice for Gianni in his green Toyota Camry. There was suspicion that Gianni was involved in the murder of Ilona and her brother Salvatore, possibly due to a conflict between young people that led to the tragedy. The search for Gianni in his car began throughout the city, as the police had a number of questions for him. They needed to determine if his girlfriend Ilona had any disputes with anyone that could have endangered her life. And they also needed to confirm his alibi. To get those answers, the police had to speak directly with Gianni. The first clue had emerged. Police had received information from dispatchers that could lead to a suspect. Police learned that shortly after Ilona contacted emergency services, a mall employee had called to report seeing a suspicious vehicle with an unknown man standing next to it. The man, who appeared to be of average height, was standing behind the driver's side window of the one vehicle. Although the witness did not hear any gunshots, screams, or signs of a struggle, she found the man's behavior unusual. He made some strange gestures before quickly returning to his car. Fortunately, the witness had taken a good look at the vehicle and provided police with a detailed description. The vehicle was very similar to the one Gianni had been driving when he went missing. At this point, police began to consider Ilona's fiancé, Gianni, as a prime suspect, as he was likely present at the crime scene. Police obtained surveillance footage, which further strengthened their belief in the reliability of an eyewitness account of the shooter. Based on the recordings, they created a description to help identify the suspect, a man of unknown race, of average height, wearing brown pants and a shirt, with some resemblance to Gianni. This raised concerns for police, as it suggested a possible love triangle. Police speculated that Gianni had discovered Ilona and Salvatore's affair. It is believed that Gianni may have encountered them in the parking lot of a shopping mall. In a fit of rage, he is believed to have shot both of them with a pistol equipped with a silencer before fleeing the scene. While this scenario is common in love triangles, it remains a theory that needs to be confirmed. Friends of the couple have dismissed the police theories, insisting that Ilona had nothing to do with Salvatore. They believe that she was deeply in love with Gianni and that both young people were victims of an attack by an unknown assailant, while Gianni had nothing to do with the crime. There is even the possibility that he was kidnapped. Even with this testimony, the police still did not rule out Gianni as a suspect. The police returned to speak with Leonardo, the father of the Belvedere family. The police informed Leonardo that Gianni was considered one of the prime suspects in the case. However, for Gianni's family and friends, this was hard to believe. They could not imagine him being involved in any kind of heinous act. Gianni had always been a well-mannered and calm person. He did not associate with troublemakers. He was known for his intelligence, optimism, and ambitious plans for the future, including with his beloved Ilona. The idea that he could have resorted to violence against his own brother and fiancé seemed completely absurd. While the police searched for Gianni, his family reached out to him through the media, believing there had been a misunderstanding and that he would return home soon. Despite suspicions surrounding him, his mother and sister encouraged him to come back to clear his name. They also appealed to anyone who might have information about Gianni's whereabouts. Unfortunately, they received no significant leads. Police explored the possibility that someone else might be involved in the murders of the two young victims, yet they felt it was important to keep an eye on Gianni for any possible threats. They also looked into the involvement of organized crime, considering whether the victims might have been gang members or had connections to drug activities and deaths. However, there was no evidence linking them to illegal substances or criminal activity. Toxicology reports showed no traces of alcohol or drugs in their body, and neither had a criminal record or enemies who wanted to harm them. The crime appeared to be planned specifically targeting Ilona and Salvatore. The perpetrator acted with determination and confidence, leading police to dismiss the idea that the victims were simply random targets of a violent attack. Despite this, none of Gianni's acquaintances believed he could have carried out such a brutal crime. Nevertheless, police remained convinced that the incidents were closely tied to him and found his disappearance highly suspicious. Police decided to investigate the Gianni's mobile phone history. They found that his phone had been turned off at 11:45 p.m. on the night of the double murder and had not been turned back on since. Gianni's last call was to his cousin. The police contacted this relative to gather more information about their conversation that evening. The cousin confirmed that Gianni had called him but mentioned that nothing unusual was discussed. They casually chatted and Gianni simply mentioned he was going to the mall to pick up Ilona, as he usually did. That concluded their conversation. Ilona did not enjoy driving, despite having a driver's license, so Gianni always picked her up after work. Police were able to access Ilona's cell phone records, who was found dead in the mall parking lot. They discovered that shortly before her death, she had sent several text messages to Gianni, but he had ignored them. Ilona attempted to contact him after 2:45 p.m., but no one answered. She then called Gianni's brother Salvatore, asking him to pick her up from the parking lot. Salvatore agreed and drove to her location. It was revealed that they had been in a car in the parking lot from midnight to 1 a.m. Ilona was very worried about Gianni, prompting her to call friends, acquaintances, the local hospital, and the morgue to find him. This behavior was unusual for her, suggesting that she was increasingly worried that he might have had an accident on the way to the mall. On January 17, 2014, the police received an important tip in the case. A witness reported seeing a suspicious car parked near her home for an extended period. The abandoned vehicle was identified as Gianni's Toyota Camry, located in a remote area of Riverside, San Diego. The police were alarmed by a foul odor coming from the car, which piqued their interest. They quickly arrived at the scene and checked the car's license plates against their database, discovering that the plates were fake. Upon further investigation, they found out that the car belonged to the missing person, Gianni. Officers entered the car and noticed blood on the passenger seat, which was a concerning sign. While inspecting the vehicle, they also detected a strong odor of decomposition, particularly near the trunk. The police recognized this smell, indicating that a body was nearby. Unfortunately, they discovered the body of a person, believed to be Gianni, in an advanced state of decomposition. Due to the hot weather, dental records were needed for identification. A forensic expert confirmed the police suspicions. It was indeed Gianni. After the identification, the victim's family was informed of the tragic news. They were devastated, as they had held on to hope that their son would be safe. The police were faced with a serious situation. Who would want to harm these young individuals? A forensic examination revealed that Gianni had been dead for approximately 3 weeks before he was discovered. A bullet was found in his skull, which was the cause of Gianni's death. Based on the position of the body and the nature of the wounds, it appeared that the shooter was on his side when the shot was fired. The bullet entered behind Gianni's left ear, causing fatal injuries. He died of blood loss. Police analyzed the bullet that killed Gianni and matched it to the bullets that killed Salvatore and Ilona. Ballistics tests confirmed that all the bullets were fired from the same type of weapon. It is possible that all the victims were killed by the same person. Could it have been an accident? A deliberate crime resulted in the deaths of the young people. But the theory of a love triangle was eventually ruled out. The police decided to start their investigation from scratch. In the trunk of Gianni's car, forensic experts discovered several empty air freshener cans. These had been left behind by the attacker after repinning the buttons. This may have been an attempt to hide the smell of decomposition from the car for as long as possible. Although experts were unable to collect DNA samples from the suspect to identify the killer, they noted that the buttons on the air freshener cans had been secured with pieces of tape. After a thorough examination, the police discovered tiny traces of DNA on one of the tapes, hoping to gather clues about the mysterious killer. They entered this information into a database, but unfortunately, there were no matches. This suggests that the killer likely does not have a criminal record. However, this process was still valuable, as the system would automatically notify them if a matching DNA sample was ever added to the database. Despite this setback with the DNA, the case took a new turn soon after. Less than a day after Gianni's body was found, on January 18th, another incident occurred that initially appeared unrelated. During the investigation of the triple murder, police officers uncovered important clues. About an hour's drive from San Diego, security officers in San Clemente stopped a man at a checkpoint. He appeared nervous and suspicious during the inspection of his car, which revealed a large cache of weapons in the trunk. This included an AR-15 assault rifle, hundreds of rounds of ammunition, a .45 caliber pistol, and a .22 caliber pistol equipped with a rifled barrel and a homemade silencer. The man, heavily armed, was identified as Carlo Mercado, who was 29 years old at the time of his arrest. The police database indicated that Carlo legally owned 2 firearms. He did not have any previous convictions, and he was not listed as a potential threat in law enforcement records. As a result, he was released immediately, and his guns were confiscated. However, officers later discovered he also had an illegal pistol of that caliber. Given the presence of a homemade silencer, this illegal pistol might have been the weapon used in the triple murder. The police spent 4 months collecting evidence and preparing charges while waiting for the investigation to conclude. Special agents took charge of examining the confiscated weapons, focusing on the illegal distribution of firearms. Carlo had already admitted guilt for the illegal use of weapons after police offered him a plea deal. This deal was essential for them to formally request DNA samples from the Carlo. Once he agreed, the samples were collected and checked against the police database. This led to a match with DNA taken from the Scotch tape found in Gianni's car, which had previously been uploaded to the database. A ballistic examination of Carlo's pistol confirmed that it was the weapon used to shoot all 3 young victims. To further establish his connection to the crime, police analyzed geolocation data from Carlo's mobile phone. This analysis showed that he was near the shopping center at the time of the shooting. His motorcycle had broken down, which made it difficult for the police to find him initially, as he did not appear in most of the security camera footage. However, some footage did capture the motorcycle he used to get to the parking lot, where he was seen standing next to it. When Carlo spotted Gianni's car while he was waiting for her Ilona, Carlo saw it as a perfect chance to steal a vehicle. He attempted to threaten Gianni into handing over the car keys, but Gianni fought back. Gianni was unaware of Carlo's dangerous obsession with weapons. He fancied himself a killer and had long fantasized about using a gun. The police later discovered evidence of this obsession during their investigation. Carlo frequently searched the internet for information about weapons, often focusing on gun-related murders, including mass school shootings. His bizarre fantasies prompted him to act. He approached Gianni's car and, in one swift motion, pulled out a .22 caliber pistol. He shot Gianni at close range, then climbed into the car and pushed him into the passenger seat. Excited by the act of acting out his violent fantasy, he drove around the parking lot in Gianni's car before leaving the scene of the crime. Carlo drove to the nearest gas station, as confirmed by the geolocation on his phone. He then decided to go back to get his motorbike, which he had left in a parking lot. On the way back, he crashed into a car carrying Salvatore and Ilona. They recognized it as Gianni's car, and Ilona was excited to see her lover's car. She signaled Salvatore to come closer, but this turned out to be a grave mistake. When she realized that the driver was not her boyfriend, it was too late. Ilona panicked and tried to call emergency services, but was unable to finish the call because a bullet had hit her car. Carlo shot Ilona and Salvatore, the brother of the first victim. After killing them, he drove to a gas station and filled up Gianni's car, while the owner was still inside, having bled to death from a gunshot wound. The next morning, Carlo began looking into a murder that had occurred on Christmas Eve. Police later discovered Carlo's fingerprints on the gas cap of Gianni's car. Their efforts to collect and analyze evidence paid off. As a result, in April 2014, Carlo Mercado was arrested and charged with 3 counts of murder. Initially, Carlo maintained his innocence. He denied using a weapon against the victims, arguing that he did not know them and had no involvement in the murders. However, the prosecution continued to analyze the evidence, building a case that would ensure the criminal would be imprisoned for life. In June 2014, the trial began, with the prosecution arguing that the attack stemmed from a desire to steal Gianni's car. The prosecution claimed that Gianni had gone to the mall to meet Ilona and was waiting for her in the parking lot. While there, Gianni confronted Carlo, who had also come to the mall. In a fit of rage, Carlo used an unregistered pistol equipped with a silencer. After firing the shots, he fled in Gianni's car. Security cameras recorded the incident and Carlo realized that the police would be looking for the car. To avoid arrest, he changed the car's original license plate to a fake one, filled it with gas, and then returned to the mall to retrieve his motorcycle. Carlo returned to retrieve the motorcycle because he believed it might attract the attention of the police. At that time, Ilona and Salvatore saw Gianni's car while they were trying to find out what happened to Ilona's boyfriend. Instead of running away, Carlo chose to eliminate all witnesses. He used a pistol with a silencer to kill Ilona and Salvatore. The prosecutor's office believed that Carlo saw himself as a professional killer who could escape justice after killing 3 young people. This mindset persisted until the next trial, but just before that date in late July 2016, Carlo admitted his guilt and revealed many details about the crime. He admitted to using air freshener to cover up the smell of decomposing corpses in the trunk of his car. He even tried to sell the car a few weeks after the murders. However, after 3 weeks, the smell became too strong to ignore, so he abandoned the car outside the city. Carlo Mercado was eventually sentenced to 3 life sentences without the possibility of parole. During the trial, Carlo showed no remorse. He remained calm, appearing indifferent to the proceedings. Carlo did not seek forgiveness from the victims' families. Surprisingly, he chose to waive his right to appeal, seemingly as a way of admitting his guilt for the murder of innocent young people.
The case of Ramsey Scrivo. In January 2014, Donna Scrivo lived in the charming town of St. Clair Shores, Michigan, with her eldest son, Ramsey. He grew up in an environment of strict control from his mother, which often led to problems. Ramsey, born in 1981, had a younger brother who. Both boys attended a Catholic school, and their parents had high aspirations for them. In 1999, Ramsey graduated from college and began working at an accounting firm. However, by the end of 2000, he was fired, which was the beginning of a series of job losses. Ramsey then tried to join the family business. It seemed like Ramsey had finally found his place and things were going well. Unfortunately, the family soon faced a tragedy when the father fell ill and passed away. On January 25, 2014, around 6:30 p.m., 32-year-old Ramsey left home, telling his mother he was going out for cigarettes. That was the last time she saw him alive. At first, no one suspected anything was wrong. He was an adult who could go out with friends or visit places on his own. So, no alarm was raised immediately. However, the next morning, Donna realized Ramsey hadn't returned home. When he didn't answer her calls, she began to worry. After waiting another day without any news, on January 27th, she decided to report his disappearance to the police. After filing the report, Donna continued to call Ramsey's mobile phone, becoming increasingly anxious with each attempt. The cold weather added to her worry. If Ramsey was indeed missing, he could be at risk of freezing if he were outside. It was crucial to act quickly. Soon after, a police officer reached out to Ramsey's family. Donna explained that Ramsey was dealing with issues related to an attack on a friend at a bar. She also expressed concern about Ramsey's struggles with illegal substances, alcohol, and mental health, which required him to undergo regular drug and alcohol testing. The police became concerned about Ramsey's disappearance, suspecting he might have run into trouble again. Donna explained that her son had left to buy cigarettes and didn't have any plans for the night. She noted that he took a wallet containing 2 credit cards and a driver's license with him. To trace Ramsey's whereabouts, the officer decided to review the card transactions. As the investigation progressed, it became clear that Ramsey had not made any purchases that evening, casting doubt on whether he had reached the store at all. This prompted police to track Ramsey's mobile phone. They soon found it on a neighbor's property. When they examined the scene, the police retrieved the phone, but the neighbor was unaware of how it had ended up in his yard or what had happened to Ramsey. The investigation revealed that the Ramsey's mobile phone was checked, and it showed no record of the calls that Donna claimed to have made before and after her son's disappearance. This contradiction raised additional suspicions with the police, leading them to question the validity of the call records. Police then approached neighbors to gather more information about Ramsey and his mother. This investigation revealed that neighbors had not seen Ramsey for several days, which contradicted his mother's claims. Another disturbing detail noted by neighbors was the strong smell of cleaning products coming from Ramsey's home, which was detected the day before Donna reported Ramsey missing. Based on their experience, they found these signs very suspicious. There seemed to be some unusual elements surrounding the Ramsey family. Donna Scrivo, born in 1954 in Dallas, Texas, dreamed of becoming a nurse since she was a child. Her dream came true when she met Daniel in August 1971. They got married, and 2 months later, their eldest son, Ramsey, was born. The family then moved to Donna's house in Michigan City, St. Clair Shores, where their youngest son was later born. They lived a modest life and maintained good relationships with their relatives and neighbors for many years. The family's first major challenge arose in 2003 when Donna suffered a heart attack. Remarkably, she survived the surgery, but her health began to decline afterwards. She became forgetful and anxious, ultimately having to leave her job as a nurse. Nevertheless, she had pursued her passion for nursing for 12 years before these events unfolded. Donna grew increasingly concerned that her son, Ramsey, was struggling with mental health issues. He was severely depressed and unable to manage his anger. They sought help at a psychiatric hospital, where he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. After that diagnosis, Donna became reluctant to let Ramsey go far from home, fearing he might endanger himself or others. This concern intensified because he refused to take the medication prescribed by his doctor, insisting he didn't want to experience certain side effects. Unfortunately, this decision hindered his ability to combat his illness, and his condition continued to deteriorate, with symptoms becoming more pronounced. Ramsey was convinced that someone was poisoning his food and drinks. He even believed a nanochip had been implanted in his tooth to track him. After getting into a fight, he suffered a serious head injury when he fell and hit the concrete. Following this incident, he experienced worsening symptoms. He became increasingly aggressive, and his alcohol abuse only intensified the situation. Eventually, he became a danger to himself and others, landing on probation after an altercation with a friend at a bar. His condition worsened when Ramsey's father, Neil, passed away. Neil was an important figure in Ramsey's life, as they developed a deep bond that resembled that of best friends. He was the only one who could control Ramsey's dangerous behavior. At that time, Ramsey was taking his medication consistently and his condition had stabilized. Neil had acted as a buffer between Ramsey's mental health struggles and his wife, who sought to control every aspect of their lives. When Neil died, tensions between Ramsey and his mother increased. Ramsey began using morphine left over from his late father. And during this time, his mental decline became more apparent. Donna was concerned for her safety, so she sought hospitalization for her son at a psychiatric clinic, where he was later diagnosed with psychosis. While he was in the hospital, she also worked to establish legal guardianship over him. This allowed the doctors to manage his medication, leading to a quick improvement in Ramsey's condition. After he was discharged, he returned to live with Donna, but their relationship began to deteriorate over time. Eventually, a fire broke out in their home due to faulty wiring. The fire started in the basement where Ramsey was sleeping. Donna evacuated the house and called the fire department, but Ramsey was still in the room that was on fire. They were able to save him, but after investigating, the circumstances surrounding the fire raised suspicions. However, no evidence of premeditation was ever found. Ultimately, they could no longer live in the damaged house, which required significant repairs. So, they decided to rent a different house temporarily. Unfortunately, this only made things worse. Ramsey, who was 32 years old, was still under his mother's strict guardianship. She had formalized this guardianship through the court. However, by June 2014, Ramsey went to court to end the guardianship, which his mother had maintained for about 6 months. Life had taken a toll on Ramsey, and Donna's efforts to control everything ultimately led him to move out. By the time the tragedy occurred, Ramsey had been living independently for a while. Donna then went to Texas to visit relatives. She considered the possibility of returning to her hometown, possibly with her son. However, her son, Ramsey, went missing on January 27, 2014, and Donna reported Ramsey missing to the police. Days passed without any clues until January 30th, when a witness came forward. While driving along a snow-covered road in China Township, she noticed something dark on the side of the road. When she stopped to check, she discovered intestines scattered across a field, covered in blood. The sight shocked the girl. Nearby, she noticed a bag, and when she opened it, she discovered a human head inside. There were also other horrifying items. Terrified, she quickly called the police. When the police arrived, they were equally horrified by the discovery and immediately began searching the area. In addition to the head and intestines they later found the torso, but no other remains were found. Both the head and torso were mutilated, and the victim was unrecognizable. While the police were working to identify the body they had discovered, they received a tip from a local resident the very next morning. In one of the city's trash cans, several suspicious items were found packed in garbage bags, including burnt clothing and an ID card. At that point, the police had no idea who the victim was, and the items they found were in such poor condition due to fire damage that they could not read the documents. It was clear that the deceased was a man. But even before the lab tests could begin, reports of other disturbing discoveries began to emerge in the city. More human remains were found, along with a bloody electric saw and 4 blades used to dismember the victim. In a trash bin, there were also clothes and a Coca-Cola bottle. By this point, the forensic expert had completed the analysis and autopsy of the body, including collecting fingerprints for comparison with existing databases. Eventually, it was confirmed that the deceased was 32-year-old Ramsey Scrivo, whose disappearance had recently been reported by Donna. The cause of death was established as strangulation. Further blood tests revealed a dangerous level of antidepressants and Xanax in his system, 4 times higher than the prescribed dosage. This overdose could have contributed to his death, but police were already aware that his mother, Donna, had been directly overseeing his medication intake. The investigation into Ramsey's disappearance quickly shifted to a murder case. Police began interviewing his friends, acquaintances, and neighbors. A witness claimed to have seen a woman in an SUV tossing the bag away right in front of him, but he could not identify her or provide any detailed information, nor could he remember the car's license plate. However, police went to the location where the suspect was seen dumping trash. They found nearby surveillance cameras and requested the footage. After reviewing the recordings, they were able to get a clear image of the car and the woman driving it. The woman turned out to be Donna Scrivo, Ramsey's mother, who had transported her son's dismembered remains in her 1990 Chevrolet Bezier to the city dumpsters. The police were shocked by the unfolding events and found some of Donna's actions suspicious, but they did not initially believe she could have killed her son. Nevertheless, an arrest warrant was issued, and Donna was quickly taken into custody. She was brought to the police station for questioning. At first, Donna did not provide any useful information. She claimed to have mental health issues and that her son had taken one's own life. However, this was clearly a lie, as his body had been dismembered and she had taken steps to dispose of the remains. The police did not believe her story. They suspected that the conflict between Donna and Ramsey had escalated, causing her to lose control. As a result, Donna was charged as the prime suspect in the murder of her 32-year-old son, facing charges of first-degree murder with aggravating circumstances. It was clear that she was trying to mislead the investigation. Police obtained search warrants for the Ramsey family's apartment and the Donna's car. When they first entered the apartment, they were hit by a strong smell of cleaning products that stung their eyes. It was clear that the Donna was attempting to clean the crime scene to eliminate evidence. However, despite her efforts, police discovered several blood droplets in the bathroom, as well as traces on the corridor wall, the porch, and the entrance railings. Notably, there were no cars in the parking lot. Interestingly, she was attempting to donate her car to a local charity in Detroit, and Donna had already managed to do the same with Ramsey's car. Nevertheless, the police tracked down both vehicles for inspection. In the Donna's car, they found numerous blood stains, which were sent for analysis and confirmed to belong to Ramsey. Locals learned about the crime through news and social media, and were all shocked by the incident. Gradually, more witnesses came forward to the police station to share their stories. During the investigation, police determined that Donna had purchased an electric saw and saw blade at a nearby hardware store on January 26th. The electric saw was eventually found in a trash bag along with Ramsey's remains. Next, Patricia, a neighbor, reported that she saw Donna carrying 3 black trash bags to her silver car. All of the neighbors were later present in court. The lawyer claimed that his client, Donna Scrivo, was insane and requested a psychiatric evaluation. However, the psychiatrists who assessed her determined that she was sane and fit to stand trial. The trial began in May 2015, and by then, she appeared before the jury, insisting on her innocence and pleading for her release. The prosecutor presented evidence that Donna had administered Xanax to the murder victim, with the dosage being 4 times higher than the recommended amount. Donna had received the 90-day supply of the drugs in early January, and less than 30 days later, during a police search of her apartment, only 1 pill remained in the package. This showed that Ramsey had taken the rest of the medication. The prosecution argued that this proved that Donna had intentionally given her son an increased dose, which was potentially dangerous. After Ramsey's death, his biological mother, Donna, made the decision to dispose of his body. In a horrific act, she dismembered him in her bathroom and placed the remains in garbage bags. To avoid being caught, she took out several bags each day, discarding them in different trash bins. However, she disagreed with the prosecution's testimony and decided to present her own testimony before the jury. According to Donna, on January 25th, a masked man broke into their apartment, likely intending to kill her son. At the time, she was in the basement doing laundry and did not hear anything unusual or see the intruder. When she came out of the basement, she found the front door open. Hearing noises from Ramsey's room, she went upstairs and discovered her son dead, tied up next to his bed, with a strong man with a menacing appearance standing nearby. The intruder did not harm her. Instead, he commanded her to dispose of the body. Feeling she had no choice, she complied. The criminal stayed with her for the next 5 days, closely watching her as she followed his orders. Donna reported that she cleaned the room and dealt with the remains under his watchful eye, and he only left after confirming that she had completed his instructions. During this time, Donna stated that she was handcuffed to a bed and that the intruder seldom let her go, even when there were things to do. Although she was confined, she claimed she didn't contact the police because she was scared, a claim many found unbelievable. This raised several questions about her story. Why did the supposed attacker not kill her? Why did he stay in her home for 5 days while controlling her? Critics questioned why she didn't try to escape when the intruder was distracted, leading some to speculate that he might not have been real or that her story was made up. As the trial progressed, the jury had to decide whether Donna's fears were genuine or if she was fabricating her story after her arrest. Throughout the lengthy legal process, she frequently mentioned the mysterious masked man who allegedly held her captive, despite the increasing evidence against her. The investigation ultimately did not find any DNA or direct links to a possible criminal regarding her son's remains, nor was there any of her blood or fingerprints on the dismembered body. Donna's defense team worked hard to prove her innocent, highlighting the absence of direct evidence linking her to Ramsey's body. As the trial progressed, it grew increasingly controversial, and the jury went to deliberate on the presented evidence. On June 23, 2015, after thorough deliberation, the jury found 61-year-old Donna Scrivo guilty of first-degree murder with aggravating factors. She received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. To this day, Donna is in a Michigan state prison. She has consistently maintained her innocence, but all of her appeals have been denied.
The case of Karen Newell. T.E. Sunday evening, February 20th, 1994, on a desolate rural road in Orange County, Florida, between Cocoa Beach and Orlando. A car was parked on the side of the road, and a woman was frantically waving her arms at passing vehicles. When a driver finally stopped, she pleaded for help. In the car's headlights, a man could be seen bleeding in the passenger seat. A woman named Karen Newell was trying to save her husband, John Newell, who had been shot multiple times but was still alive. Karen asked the driver for a phone and urgently called 911, screaming that her husband was dying. Within minutes, a deputy sheriff arrived, followed by police and paramedics, but it was too late for John. He needed a forensic expert, not medical assistance. He died before help could arrive, and all the doctors could do was confirm his death from multiple gunshot wounds. They immediately began communicating with Karen about the tragic situation. Karen recounted that they were attacked while returning home to Orlando after a day at the beach. On the way back, their car started having problems that she couldn't understand. Her husband asked her to pull over to the side of the road to check the issue. As Karen got out and opened the hood, a small sedan parked right next to them. Inside were three men who looked threatening. One detail she remembered was a sticker on the rear window that said "Bad Boy." The men got out of their car without noticing Karen, who was focused on the engine. She watched as one of them approached her husband's window and demanded his wallet. Her husband refused and tried to defend himself. During the struggle, one of the attackers pulled out a gun and shot him multiple times. Afterward, the men jumped back into their car and drove away. Fortunately, Karen was unharmed. She quickly ran to John, who was bleeding. She felt helpless and couldn't do anything to save him. Karen Newell was originally from Florida and had faced a difficult life filled with cruelty since childhood. Despite these challenges, she maintained a cheerful and energetic spirit, enjoying parties and socializing with her many friends throughout high school. As she blossomed into a beautiful young woman, heads turned wherever she went, but this did not lead to a happy family life. After graduating, she experienced several unsuccessful relationships and, by her 20th birthday, had been married twice, with both marriages ending in divorce. Nevertheless, she hopeful. That spring, she focused on advancing her career. Previously, she had held various accounting jobs and worked as a nurse in a private clinic. This charming brunette even entered beauty contests, hoping to launch a modeling career, but luck was not on her side in those pursuits. One evening, she walked into a bar in one of Orlando's suburbs. There, she found a friendly stranger sitting alone with a drink. He was John, a respected local mechanic who owned a car repair shop. Just before their meeting, John had gone through a difficult breakup with his first wife, a Navy nurse who had just returned home from a long business trip. She told him she was seeing someone else, which was why he went to the bar that night. When Karen saw him, she felt an immediate attraction. Confident and outgoing, she approached him, sat down next to him, and began chatting. She discovered that he was the owner of a popular auto repair shop, young, successful, and attractive. Their brief encounter quickly developed into a passionate night. John then fell in love with Karen, and she felt the same. Their relationship flourished rapidly, and just 2 months after their intense night together, they got married on May 22, 1993. The newlyweds appeared genuinely happy, surrounded by a wave of love and joy. Shortly after their wedding, Karen's modeling prospects improved, thanks to her husband's connections and her regular participation in beauty contests. She landed a well-paying television job, leading to a busy schedule that often kept her away for several days. Despite John's worries about losing Karen like he lost his first wife, she reassured him that she would never betray him. She reminded him that their sacrifices would eventually pay off, and together they dreamed of retiring in 5 years, free from work and worry. However, just a few months after their wedding, Karen discovered she was pregnant. The couple was thrilled. John's desire for a large family seemed within reach, and they continued to support each other through this exciting new chapter. A few days after Valentine's Day, they planned a weekend getaway to the beach in Florida to relax after a busy week. On February 20th, John and Karen packed their bags and drove to Cocoa Beach, located on the east side of Orlando. Known for its stunning views and excellent surfing, they spent the entire day enjoying the beach, having a barbecue, swimming, and before leaving, stopped by a surf shop to buy some gear. After that, they packed their belongings and headed home. Karen was driving because her husband had consumed some alcohol earlier and wanted to avoid losing his license. John sat in the front passenger seat. They passed through a toll booth and entered the state highway. At this time, her husband was adjusting the radio, which wasn't functioning properly. Suddenly, the car skidded slightly. Karen mentioned to her husband that the car felt odd, and she noticed a strong vibration in the steering wheel. They decided to pull over and investigate, but then the attack occurred. John was shot multiple times while sitting in the passenger seat of the car. The police conducted a detailed search for the attackers. Using Karen's testimony, they were able to create a detailed description of the car, noting one key detail, a sticker on the rear window. Karen later reported feeling unwell. She was pregnant, so emergency services rushed her to the hospital to ensure her and her baby's safety. 2.40 caliber shell casings were found near the car, indicating that the men were dangerous criminals. They were armed with at least one handgun. Surprisingly, they fled so quickly that they forgot to take the victim's wallet. Police alerted neighboring counties, notified all available patrols, and warned drivers of passing cars. Checkpoints were set up, with officers carefully monitoring vehicles. Initially, attention was focused on cars with bad boy stickers. However, no drivers reported seeing such a car, and it did not pass through the checkpoints. In the ambulance, Karen answered all the necessary questions about the incident. However, the health of the Karen and child was the main priority at that time. After being examined at the hospital, doctors confirmed that the Karen was in stable condition. She was able to speak with police officers later that same day. Karen provided a detailed account of the events. She explained that they were not alone on the beach. A friend from work, Peter, joined them shortly after they arrived at Cocoa Beach. The three of them spent most of the day together, and at the end of the day, they drove back to Orlando in two separate cars. Peter drove his own car while Karen followed him closely behind. After passing the toll booth, Peter drove ahead and quickly vanished from view. Soon after, Karen's car began to vibrate. Her husband insisted they stop immediately to check the car's condition. Karen got out of the driver's seat and opened the hood. Suddenly, she heard the screech of brakes as a stranger's car pulled up near theirs. Just seconds later, gunfire erupted. In that moment, Karen crouched down to hide under the open hood. She overheard the attackers, dressed in black and white, demanding her husband's wallet. Then, several loud shots rang out, and the criminals fled the scene. She noticed that the robbers didn't take the wallet, but she couldn't see their faces. The police arrived quickly and began investigating the scene, exploring various possibilities. Some unusual aspects caught their attention, raising doubts about Karen's statement. First, no one reported seeing a car marked Bad Boy. Second, it seemed odd that the robbers, who were after a wallet for money, would leave abruptly and forget their loot after committing murder. Third, they overlooked the woman and didn't check why the car's hood was open. Finally, it was odd that John, a mechanic, didn't check under the hood himself, while the one checking the car was Karen, who didn't know much about cars. The police did not charge Karen with fraud. Instead, they chose to gather more details about the case. The police quickly found some interesting information, specifically a report from 3 months earlier in Orlando. It turned out that an assault had occurred at Karen's home. According to the couple's previous statements, at around 9 p.m., Karen heard a noise in their backyard. She told her husband about it and asked him to check it out. When John went outside, he encountered two masked men. The neighbor quickly left the house when he heard the noise, and the porch light suddenly turned on, scaring the attackers, so they ran away. John returned home and told his wife what had happened, and she called the rescue service. John was not seriously injured, but he had a lot of bruises. John had no valuable information that could help catch the criminals, since he could not see their faces. After a brief and unsuccessful search, John's family's case was declared unsolved. John believed that he had interrupted the robbers, leading to their attack on his home. However, things now seemed more serious. He may have inadvertently made enemies, and they had come back to destroy him. This also explained why they did not take his wallet. Their goal was never to steal, but to kill him. The police started investigating all the people that John might have had conflicts with recently. John ran a successful business, raising the question of whether competitors could resort to extreme actions. Most of John's friends and acquaintances were unaware of any conflicts. John was known to be a kind and non-confrontational person, never speaking about any unpleasant situations that might cause resentment towards him. Everyone agreed that he was always willing to help others. As the investigation progressed, it became clear that John's kind nature may have contributed to the tragedy. Police discovered that shortly before the attack, a stranger had appeared in John's backyard. He was identified as Peter, a friend of Karen's who had recently gone on vacation with their family John. Peter's apartment had been broken into, forcing him to seek temporary housing. Karen convinced John to allow Peter to stay in her home for a while, to support him during this difficult time. Peter is an attractive young man with blonde hair and blue eyes. After new discoveries in the investigation, there is growing suspicion that Karen has feelings for Peter, and that Peter is likely the father of the child. It is possible that the couple planned to eliminate John in order to benefit financially from their relationship. Peter, who had a close relationship with Karen, became a suspect in the murder investigation. He was brought to the police station for questioning. During the interview, Peter's account matched what Karen had said. He confirmed that he had gone to Cocoa Beach with Karen's family and spent time there with them, drinking beer and smoking marijuana. That evening, he drove away after passing through a checkpoint, not waiting for Karen's family because he was on his way home to Port St. Lucie. Overall, his story was consistent with Karen's account. He provided detailed information about his background to counter any claims about an affair with Karen. At that moment, it became clear that Karen had lied. She had claimed that Peter was an assistant producer at a TV channel where she worked, but that was false. In reality, Peter did not have a steady job. He had dropped out of school and occasionally did part-time work like mowing lawns. This allowed him to make enough money to get by, but he was not involved in any television work. Police learned from Peter's friends that Karen had been having an affair with Peter, which began a few months before he moved into John's house. During this time, Peter often bragged about his relationship with a married woman and often shared the story of how they met. It was later revealed that Karen had used business trips as an excuse to spend time with Peter. At the time, Karen was 29 and Peter was 18. While Karen kept the relationship a secret, she often visited him in the city, where they enjoyed days together and spent John's money. They met by chance while driving on the highway. The Karen caught his attention with her handcuff keychain hanging from her rearview mirror. When they stopped at a traffic light, he happily stuck his hands out the window as if they were handcuffed. To his surprise, she smiled back and they began flirting. After their first meeting, they spent the night together on the beach. His friends noticed that Peter was very fond of Karen. He even talked seriously about marrying her and was convinced that she might be pregnant with his child. The couple had a clear motive for killing John. However, at this stage of the investigation, there was no concrete evidence to confirm their involvement. The first step was to locate the murder weapon. A .22 caliber pistol was found at the crime scene. Police are looking for witnesses who may know about Peter and Karen's weapons. They interviewed one of the Karen's ex-husbands, who revealed that Peter was not Karen's only sexual partner. She often meets with her ex in various hotels. In November 1993, she approached him with an unusual request to borrow a .22 caliber pistol for self-defense, claiming she felt threatened after two strangers attacked John. He believed her and provided her with the weapon, which raised suspicions. It is necessary to locate the pistol and conduct ballistics testing to determine whether John was shot with this gun. When the police asked Karen's ex-husband about the weapon, he reported that she had not yet returned it. This raised the police's suspicions about Karen's involvement in her husband's death. As they investigated her background, they discovered that she was on probation at the time. In the 1980s, Karen had been convicted of credit card forgery and large-scale theft. Because of her probation status, she was not allowed to possess the weapon given to her by her ex-husband. Consequently, just 8 days after John's death, Karen was arrested for violating her probation, which meant she would remain in custody until the investigation was finished. Police quickly received crucial evidence just 2 days after the arrest. They interviewed Louis Aragon, Karen's half-brother. Louis had a criminal history. In the summer of 1993, Karen approached him with a proposition. Her husband had a $500,000 life insurance policy, and Karen wanted him to help eliminate John. In exchange, she promised him a large payout. However, despite the tempting offer, Louis refused to participate in the murder. In November, Peter and Karen planned to brutally beat John in their yard over a money dispute. Fortunately, a neighbor intervened in time and scared the attackers away, which angered Karen, who had begun to plan how to get rid of her troublesome husband. Key to the investigation was the testimony of her half-brother, Louis. He revealed that Karen had approached him just days after the first attack and tried to convince him to participate in a second murder, but he had refused. Peter, however, was willing to do anything for Karen. As Thanksgiving approached in 1993, Karen convinced her husband to allow Peter to live with them. The police needed to verify the truthfulness of their new witness. They started by reviewing the couple's insurance policies. They discovered that Karen had taken out a life insurance policy on her husband for $250,000, which was stored in his safe. Over time, she acquired several additional policies, totaling around $500,000, a significant sum at that time. It appeared that her greed led her to eliminate her husband in order to collect the insurance payouts. Karen was determined to receive the money. In the days following John's death, she contacted various insurance companies, and some had already issued her compensation by the time of the investigation. However, the largest payments were on hold, prompting Karen to visit multiple insurance companies to demand her money. Meanwhile, on March 28, 1994, Peter was arrested as well. Both were charged with John Newell's murder. The prosecutor's office alleges that from the beginning, Karen began her relationship with John with the intention of receiving his insurance money. After getting married, she quickly took out a $250,000 life insurance policy and continued to purchase smaller policies. After their marriage, she quickly purchased a $250,000 life insurance policy and continued to purchase smaller policies. However, she did not directly participate in any crimes. Instead, she manipulated Peter and convinced him that they would marry and have a child together, portraying her husband, John, as an obstacle to their future. After the murder, a pregnancy test was conducted and it was found that she was not pregnant. She had an IUD, preventing any possibility of pregnancy at the time. Karen was fully aware of this. It was clear that her claim of being pregnant was simply a manipulation tactic to control the men around her. Given her deceitful nature, The prosecutor's office was aiming for the death penalty. And Peter was also facing the death penalty. So it was easy to get a confession by offering a deal. The plea agreement included cross-examination, during which Peter quickly admitted to having an affair with Karen. He claimed that they had been intimate at every meeting. She had won his heart. Peter revealed that it was Karen who had suggested attacking John in his apartment. When that plan failed, Karen began planning a more elaborate crime. As soon as Peter got out of the car, he pointed a gun at John's head and fired 3 more bullets into John's chest. Peter then dumped the gun in a lake several miles from the crime scene. Divers were able to recover the gun, and ballistics tests confirmed that it was the same gun that had shot John Newell. Additionally, the gun's serial number matched the serial number registered to Karen's ex-husband. In exchange for this crucial information, Peter was offered a plea deal for second-degree murder instead of first-degree murder. During the preliminary hearing, it was clear that Karen's lawyers were determined to fight hard. They tried to blame Peter, arguing that he was the mastermind behind the crime, motivated by jealousy over. Karen was portrayed as an innocent victim caught in the love triangle. If Karen was not involved in planning the murder, then how did Peter get the gun that her ex-husband owned? She never gave a satisfactory explanation for this. In addition, Peter and Karen's ex-husband did not know each other. The ex-husband even confirmed that Karen asked him for a gun. On September 5, 1994, Peter was sentenced to a long prison term with the possibility of parole, and he was released in early January 2010. And Karen Newell was sentenced to life in prison. She complained that it was unfair that Peter, who pulled the trigger, received the lighter sentence than she. The case of Kelly Brennan. On the evening of February 15, 2010, Kelly Brennan, 46, failed to show up for her scheduled gym session, which was unusual because she never missed a workout. Her trainer tried calling her, but no one answered. Soon, the disturbing truth about her situation began to emerge. Kelly's neighbor and friend, Stephanie, had seen her that morning at around 6 a.m. as Kelly was leaving for work. After their brief encounter, Stephanie went to her job and did not see or speak to Kelly again until later in the day. Despite Stephanie's efforts to reach her, she received no response. By 11 p.m., Stephanie was concerned enough to call 911 to report Kelly missing. When the police arrived at Kelly's house, Stephanie told them that Kelly had taken her sports uniform for the training session. Kelly was well known for being responsible and punctual, making her disappearance all the more alarming. Police began to gather more information about Kelly Brennan. Born in 1963 in New Jersey, she had 4 older sisters and was known for her kind personality. After graduating from high school, Kelly planned to attend medical school to study nursing. To help pay for her college tuition, she worked as a waitress. She was recognized for her independence and strong work ethic. After graduating, she moved to a small, peaceful town called Andy Allen Tick in Florida, which has a population of about 3,000 and is located on the coast. There, she became a nurse at a local hospital and also worked part-time at a restaurant. It was at this restaurant that she met her future husband, Gina, the restaurant manager. They eventually married, bringing happiness into Kelly's life. Kelly led an active lifestyle and loved sports. In addition to attending gym classes, she enjoyed biking with friends. One of her biking partners was Sheila Trott, who had moved from Canada to this beautiful resort town. Sheila worked as a diving instructor and also had a part-time job at the restaurant where Kelly was employed. Sheila met and fell in love with Daniel Trott, a charming pilot, and they married in 1989. They had 2 sons, and Sheila became a dedicated homemaker. The family was happy, and when the children grew older, Sheila pursued a career as a realtor. Meanwhile, Daniel became mayor of Andy Allen Tick in 2002, serving until 2006. Over the years, Sheila and Kelly maintained a friendship, often cycling together and enjoying time with her husband. In 2009, Sheila discovered that her husband was cheating on her, which left her devastated. Despite her grief, Sheila, with resilience, tried to save their marriage. But that did not solve their problems. In March 2009, after a difficult time, her husband Daniel filed for divorce. At the same time, Kelly was also having marital problems. She wanted a divorce, although her husband wanted to stay together. Unable to bear her unhappy situation, Kelly left her husband and moved in with her friend, Stephanie. About 6 months later, on February 15, 2010, Kelly disappeared. Police found out that Kelly had multiple sclerosis, which led them to consider the possibility that she might have been involved in a car accident and felt too weak to drive properly. They searched for her car along her route to the gym and checked local hospitals, but they found nothing. Her car was listed as wanted. The police discovered that Kelly was supposed to work a shift at the hospital and had left around 6 o'clock in the evening. They also visited the gym to talk to her trainer, who confirmed that Kelly hadn't shown up for her session by 9 o'clock. The next morning, Sheila's mother called the police to report that her daughter had suffered a nervous breakdown and had a disturbing dream about Kelly. This was strange because Sheila was unaware of Kelly's disappearance at the time. Female police officers arrived to respond to the call. Sheila's sons, who lived with her, noticed that she had been acting strangely since the night before. Concerned for her health, they took her to the hospital. But the doctors found nothing wrong and she was sent home. Upon her return, Sheila had a nightmare that caused her to scream in her sleep. Worried about Sheila, her children called their grandmother. Sheila's mother arrived that night to support Sheila and stay by her side. While in bed, Sheila kept telling her mother that she had a terrible dream about Kelly. As a result, Sheila's mother called 911 again. When the police arrived, they found Sheila in distress. When they asked her about the dream, Sheila said she had seen someone she loved and felt she had hurt someone else. She repeatedly pictured Kelly's face but couldn't explain more. She insisted that Kelly was in danger and even pointed out a specific location where she thought Kelly might be. The police followed up on this information and went to search the area Sheila indicated. The situation was complicated by the thick vegetation, which made it difficult to see clearly in the area. A helicopter was called in to search from the air. They spotted legs sticking out of the bushes. When police arrived, they found the body of a woman wearing tracksuit bottoms and who closely resembled Kelly. The body was covered in blood and showed clear signs of a struggle, although the murder may have occurred elsewhere. It seemed the crime was particularly brutal. Sheila faced skepticism about her alleged supernatural abilities. Police believed she may have testified about the incident or held valuable information regarding the case. Police spoke with Sheila and her husband, Daniel, who was in the process of divorcing her. Daniel admitted to having an affair with Kelly, which started after he moved out of Sheila's home. That evening, Daniel was anxious because Kelly did not show up at the fitness club as planned. He claimed that Sheila had found out about their affair, which led to a confrontation involving Kelly. Daniel also mentioned that Kelly's ex-husband, Gina, was aware of the affair. Gina met Daniel at Kelly's new home while she was staying with Daniel. Kelly asked Gina to leave, after which she argued with Gina, which resulted in a heated argument and Gina hitting her. Kelly called 911, but when the police arrived, she chose not to file a complaint and instead left. After this incident, Gina threatened Daniel, leading him to believe that Kelly's ex-husband might have killed her out of jealousy. The police realized that the killer might be someone involved in a complicated love triangle and decided to investigate everyone involved in the affair. Daniel had an alibi. He worked all day and then went to the gym. This left him no time to be at the site where the body was discovered, about an hour's drive from the city. The prime suspect remained Kelly's jealous husband, who had a history of violence against her. The autopsy results revealed that Kelly died from trauma caused by a blunt object striking her head, resulting in a fractured skull. There were no skin particles under her fingernails that matched the Gina's DNA, suggesting she did not fight back. This indicated that she was likely struck from behind, lost consciousness, and the attacker continued to strike her until she was no longer alive. The suspected murder weapon was a hammer. Police questioned Gina, who revealed that he had found out about his wife's affair through text messages from Sheila. He admitted to attacking Daniel but denied killing Kelly, claiming he had an alibi. The police then turned their attention to Sheila. The person had been showing signs of instability since the night before. They suspected her, especially since she was the one who revealed where Kelly's body was found. When approached by the police for questioning, Sheila refused to cooperate. The police then returned to Kelly's house, where a thorough investigation uncovered signs of a struggle. They discovered Kelly's car nearby with blood on the floor mats. Neighbors reported seeing a suspicious blonde woman arriving in a white car close to the house that evening, suggesting that Kelly was attacked as she came home. Police obtained a search warrant for Sheila's home and found her white car there. Inside the car, they discovered a drop of blood, which was sent to a lab for analysis. The test results showed that it was Kelly's blood. On February 17, 2010, Sheila was arrested. Although she knew about the situation, she chose to remain silent and not testify. Sheila tried to face first-degree murder charges. Meanwhile, police began to gather evidence against her. 4 years later, just before a scheduled court hearing, Sheila's sons, then 21 and 23, went to the police. They explained that their mother had undergone a major change after learning about her husband's affair with Kelly. Sheila became angry and directed her anger at Kelly. Her sons recalled that on February 15, 2010, Sheila had spent the day painting the walls of their home. They said she had gone to Walmart that evening and returned around 11 p.m. without purchasing anything, but wearing different clothes. Sheila eventually admitted to her sons that she had killed Kelly. But they did not believe her. They asked where Kelly's body was, and Sheila said she could show them. That night, they all got into the car and drove to the location where the body was found. The teens were frightened by the sight of the legs and ran away, confused by what they had seen. Not knowing what to do, they called their grandmother for help, after which Sheila's mother contacted the police, and they located Kelly's body based on Sheila's instructions. Shortly after, Sheila wrote a letter from prison stating that her memory had returned. She claimed that she witnessed Kelly's murder in reality, not in a dream. She described seeing Kelly being attacked by an unknown man while she was parked and waiting for her friend. No one believed Sheila's story. People questioned why she didn't call the police right after witnessing the murder. During the trial, her sons testified against her. Tensions rose in court as Sheila insisted she loved Kelly and would never hurt her, but the evidence of her actions was clear. Although Sheila stuck to her account, she couldn't convincingly explain her whereabouts in the hours leading up to the murder. Her story changed over time but never gained credibility. In the end, Sheila was convicted of premeditated murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Sheila's mother feels guilty for having called the police, believing she played a part in her daughter's severe sentence. The case of Brittany McGlone. Brittany McGlone was born in 1987 to Gary and Patricia McGlone in Gordo, New Mexico. When she was young, the family moved to Winsport, a small town in northwest Texas with fewer than 4,000 residents. After the move, her parents divorced, and Brittany stayed with her mother. Her father later remarried and had 6 sons and 1 daughter. Brittany formed a close bond with her half-younger sister, Hope, who was 3 years younger. Although they lived in different states, the 2 sisters often talked on the phone and cherished spending time together during the holidays. Brittany was a kind, happy girl with a great sense of humor and an optimistic outlook on life. She helped her mother with housework, cared for her sick grandmother, and visited her father to help care for her half-siblings. Brittany graduated from high school in 2006 and worked 2 jobs at different stores. She intended to save money to attend nursing school. Unfortunately, her plans were cut short when she was tragically murdered. At the time, she was in a relationship with Jeff Stogner, her first love. However, Jeff had a history of using illegal drugs, and he was known for being rude, tough, and rebellious. Despite her family's concerns and her mother's warnings about dating someone like him, Brittany continued the relationship. Their relationship was often tumultuous, marked by frequent arguments, and Jeff subjected Brittany to both physical and emotional abuse. Brittany ended her relationship with Jeff in April 2007, but they stayed in touch. By May, they got back together, which upset her mother. On the morning of Friday, May 4th, 2007, Brittany finished her shift early at 7 a.m. She informed her mother that she would go directly to Jeff's house to sleep after her night shift, as Jeff had requested her to come over right away. Normally, Brittany would come home first, shower, rest, and have lunch before visiting him. Patricia was surprised by the sudden change in her daughter's plans but accepted it. Brittany arrived at Jeff's house before 8 a.m., where his family was present, including his parents, siblings, and his sister's boyfriend, Chad Carr. Shortly after she arrived, Jeff's mother went to work, his siblings left with their children, and Jeff and his stepfather headed to the Dallas-Fort Worth area to pick up Brittany's grandparents. Brittany laid down to sleep, needing to rest before going to work. While she slept, her mother, Patricia, kept trying to call her, but Brittany didn't answer. After 8 a.m., Patricia assumed her daughter was still sleeping and didn't think much of it. Around 3 p.m., Jeff called Brittany's house. Patricia answered the phone and Jeff asked if Brittany was home. Patricia was surprised and replied that Brittany wasn't home. Worried, she hung up and started calling Brittany's cell phone, but all the calls went straight to voicemail. Despite trying several times, Brittany didn't answer. Patricia was confused and worried because her daughter wasn't answering her phone. Patricia called Jeff again, and he explained that Brittany had been at his house when he left and was sound asleep. He assured her that Brittany was probably still sleeping and hadn't heard the calls. Patricia then asked why he had invited Brittany over if he planned to leave, but Jeff didn't respond. As he arrived home, he spotted Brittany's car and reassured Patricia that she was with him. Feeling relieved, Patricia asks him to tell Brittany to call her mother when she wakes up. That day, Patricia did not receive any calls from Jeff or her daughter. Later, 2 police officers knocked on her door. When she answered, they inquired about someone named Brenda or Debbie. Patricia didn't recognize those names, so the officers left, leaving her feeling unsettled. Worried, she called the sheriff to find out why the police had visited and who they were looking for. The sheriff asked her to stay home and promised that they would return. Eventually, the police clarified that they had mixed up the names and informed Patricia that Brittany was dead. Her body had been taken to a funeral home. Shocked, Patricia tried to get more information from the officers, but they would not share any details. Immediately, she feared that Jeff had harmed her daughter. Determined to know the truth, she went to the funeral home to identify Brittany's body and learn what had happened. There, she discovered that her daughter had been brutally murdered in her sleep. Overwhelmed by the news, Patricia could only think about her warnings to her daughter to avoid dangerous people. Eventually, Patricia began pressing the police for answers about the events at Jeff's house and her daughter's death. Jeff reported that when he arrived home, he found her car still parked outside. He assumed she was still asleep. However, when Jeff entered his bedroom, he discovered a horrifying scene. Brittany, covered in blood, and lying motionless on the bed. He quickly called 911 to report what he had seen. Patricia did not believe the story and decided to call Jeff herself. While waiting for answers, she demanded to know the truth. Jeff repeated the same story to her. Patricia then asked why he hadn't called her immediately to inform her about the murder. He explained that he was afraid to share such alarming news. When the police arrived, they assured that they would notify the relatives of the victim. Brittany's family was devastated by the news. Forensic experts began investigating the crime scene. Even experienced police officers were shocked by the brazen murder, as they had never seen anything like it before. Blood was everywhere in the room, seeping through the mattress and spreading across the floor. Forensic experts collected DNA samples from the scene, but they could not find a murder weapon, nor any signs of forced entry. This suggested that Brittany had let the attacker into the house, or the door was unlocked. Jeff was unsure whether the door was actually closed. He speculated that they may have left the back door open, a common occurrence in their sleepy town. Her work clothes were neatly folded next to the bed, but her pajamas and underwear were missing. It was reported that the perpetrator had torn off her clothes and raped her. Brittany's autopsy revealed severe head injuries. The medical examiner determined that Brittany had been beaten to death, with the cause of death being blunt force trauma, possibly a crowbar. Since no defensive wounds were found on her body, it was suggested that Brittany had been asleep during the attack and was unable to defend herself. It was also confirmed that she had been raped. The crime was believed to have a sexual motive. Jeff's DNA was found at the crime scene because he lived in the house, where his family often visited him. His friends also frequently came over, leaving their DNA in his room. The presence of multiple DNA samples made the investigation more complicated, and Jeff became the main suspect. He and his father discovered the girl's body and were the last people to see her alive, leading police to have many questions for him. Jeff was taken to the station for questioning. He shared his background with the police and insisted he was not involved in the murder. However, he was arrested for a different offense because he was on parole and had violated its terms. At that time, he was not charged with Brittany's murder. Police interviewed Patricia's mother to gather information about Brittany's relationship with Jeff. She explained that they had only been dating for 6 months, during which time they often argued. Jeff sometimes used drugs, which caused him to distance himself from her. His mother did not approve of their relationship. At one point, the couple broke up, but they later reconciled because Brittany loved him deeply and felt she could not live without him. Their relationship was toxic and unhealthy. On Tuesday, May 8, 2007, Brittany's family chose not to have a closed casket for her funeral due to the severe injuries on her face. They kindly requested that Jeff and his family stay away from the ceremony, believing he was involved in her death. However, Jeff ignored this request and attended the funeral with his family. They were not allowed to attend the ceremony, leading to an argument between Jeff's family and Brittany's relatives. This behavior upset Brittany's family and made the ceremony worse. Jeff tried to share how he had trouble sleeping in the blood-soaked bed after Brittany's murder. Brittany's family was furious and believed he was involved in the case. However, Jeff was later cleared of all suspicion. He and his father passed a lie detector test, and his alibi was confirmed by witnesses, surveillance cameras, and cell phone records. Police discovered that Jeff's phone had connected to another cell tower and his image was captured on surveillance cameras at 2 gas stations. The exact time of the Brittany's death is unclear. According to the timeline, Brittany was killed during the 7 hours when Jeff was not at home. However, there were periods when Jeff's whereabouts were unknown. He could have returned home at any time to kill Brittany or may have killed her earlier in the morning before leaving to create an alibi. The mother was unable to reach her daughter by phone that morning but thought nothing of it, assuming Brittany was still asleep, though she might have already been dead. Additionally, it raised suspicions that Jeff stopped at 2 gas stations located next to each other. The family believed he did this to ensure at least one gas station's surveillance cameras captured him, providing a potential alibi. Because of this, they felt his alibi was unreliable. Jeff's behavior that day was odd to them, and they questioned why he suddenly called Brittany to his place early in the morning. Why would he want her to sleep alone at his house when he was leaving? She could have stayed at his house, and they could have met up later. That doesn't make sense. Plus, Brittany's family suspects others, especially Chad Carr, Jeff's sister's boyfriend. They were also in the house the morning of the murder. Chad and Jeff's sister were out somewhere together, but he has no alibi. Chad knew that Jeff's family often left the back door open, and that day he went home, showered, changed clothes, and then went back to Jeff's house. Why would he need to change clothes in broad daylight, and he had never done so before? Most importantly, he had problems with the law. He was involved in robberies and had once attacked and severely beaten his ex-wife, which resulted in him serving 4 years in prison. At the time he was in prison, his wife had divorced him, so Brittany's family suspected that he was involved in the murder. Brittany's family asked the police to check on this guy, and he was summoned for questioning. Chad denied any involvement in the crime and was offered a polygraph test, which he agreed to take but failed. However, this failure was not considered evidence, so he was released. At that time, the police had no evidence against Jeff and Chad, and they were not even regarded as suspects. Chad's ex-wife, Britt, contacted the police, alleging that he had abused her. It was revealed that in 2006, he had been released from prison and asked Britt to bring their child to him. She complied, but Chad reacted violently, attacking her with a baton, kidnapping their daughter, and raping Britt. She later filed a complaint, which resulted in Chad being imprisoned for 8 years. After Brittany's murder, Britt viewed Chad as cruel and aggressive, believing he was capable of killing. Brittany's family overlooked Jeff's strange social media posts and inappropriate jokes about murders, which seemed to mock Brittany's memory. It raised suspicion when Jeff's family moved to another house and the murder scene was demolished. Brittany's family thought this indicated they were hiding something, leading them to suspect the demolition was a way to obscure the truth. There were allegations that Jeff had been dealing drugs from that house. It's possible Brittany discovered this or threatened to report him, which might have made her a target for elimination as a witness. Brittany's family called for justice from the police, but the investigation stalled and the case went cold. Initially, the police mishandled the evidence collection at the crime scene and allowed Jeff's family to enter the house, contaminating the area. They also failed to investigate around the house or search the nearby lake for the murder weapon. In 2017, the sheriff and his deputy were charged with falsifying evidence and providing false testimony, leading to their removal from office. In December 2021, a new sheriff was elected. He met with Brittany's family and assured them that he would do his best to hold the criminal accountable for his actions. The new sheriff announced that his team was engaging with several parties involved in the case. The Brittany family felt hopeful that the criminals would be caught and punished. The sheriff and his deputies maintained regular communication with the family, keeping them updated on the investigation. Although Jeff's home, where the crime occurred, had been torn down, the sheriff stated that evidence, including blood stains and DNA, was collected on the first day of the investigation. He planned to re-examine this evidence using modern technology to find answers. The sheriff also intends to re-interview Jeff's entire family and other people involved and seek assistance from local residents. At the time, Jeff was not considered a suspect and was actively cooperating with the police, providing his alibi. Chad was released from prison in November 2020 after serving time again. On September 1st, 2022, he was arrested in Dallas, 15 years after the murder of Brittany McGlone. He faces charges for her murder, and the death penalty is a potential outcome. Police collected evidence from Chad's home, including several items such as a pair of white shorts with blood stains, a gray ski mask, and 2 pairs of women's panties. The police chief stated that both old and new evidence contributed to Chad's recent arrest. Throughout the investigation, police always determined that Chad was the perpetrator, as all the evidence pointed to him. However, the specifics of this evidence have not been revealed. Chad is currently in jail awaiting trial and is facing the death penalty. Jeff maintains that he was not involved in Brittany's murder and believes that the accusations have destroyed his life. Many people view him as a murderer, which he finds hard to cope with. His personal life is challenging. He divorced his wife because he cannot move on from Brittany. However, Brittany's family does not believe Jeff's claims. They describe him as a narcissist who only loves himself and think that he tries to gain sympathy by portraying himself as a victim. The case of Donald Mellon. Donald Mellon grew up in a loving environment, enjoying a happy childhood in a wealthy family that owned a McDonald's in the western suburbs of Phoenix, Arizona. He was financially well off and attracted many girls, but he longed for a real family. He shunned superficial relationships and fleeting encounters. Eventually, he met his first love, Karen Dawson. Their relationship initially portrayed an ideal picture of a happy family, where Donald was a loving father and family man who was adored by his 3 daughters. He, along with his wife Karen and their children, enjoyed a comfortable life together. However, over the years, Donald developed problems with alcohol. Despite the impact on his family, he refused to seek help or stop drinking, eventually leading Karen to make the difficult decision to divorce him. This loneliness changed Donald dramatically. His old self seemed to have disappeared completely. He now sported exotic tattoos and spent his time partying at clubs, frequenting a strip club on Bourbon Street. As a regular, the club manager introduced him to Rebecca, a 23-year-old girl who had recently arrived from Nebraska. After escaping an abusive marriage, she is looking for a fresh start with her young son. Rebecca was born in Newport Beach, California, but spent most of her childhood in Omaha, Nebraska. She describes her childhood as being in a very religious household. As she entered her teens, Rebecca recounted experiences of being molested by men. She felt a lack of closeness with her parents and experienced rejection throughout her adolescence. At one point, she was placed in the custody of the Nebraska Child Welfare Department and moved between different foster homes. This sense of loneliness followed her throughout her life. When Rebecca expressed her desire to leave Omaha, her ex-boyfriend reacted violently, throwing her across the room. She was often bruised, and when she hinted at wanting to leave, he threatened her with a gun. Feeling that her life was in danger, she decided that she could no longer stay with her abusive boyfriend. One night, she escaped and ran away to Minnesota. At a cheap motel, an employee suggested that she move to Arizona, praising the beauty of the place. Rebecca really wanted to go to this place, but she decided to wait until a better time. Rebecca found a job as a sales clerk at a shopping mall, where she met a young man and they quickly got engaged in Las Vegas. He was 19 and she was 18. Their love grew stronger, and soon after, she gave birth to a son. However, their happy story took a turn for the worse. After her husband quit his job, Rebecca faced more hardships. To support her family, she began dancing at nightclubs. Fate brought Rebecca to a strip club, where she earned a good income and was able to support her family, while a nanny looked after her son. However, returning home after work was difficult because her husband, an unemployed and often drunk man, not only relied on her but also often insulted her. Eventually, Rebecca decided to leave her husband. She confided in one of her wealthy regular clients about her situation, and he gave her $20,000 to help her escape to Arizona. To protect herself, She gave a photo of her husband to the bouncers at the club, instructing them not to let him in or reveal her whereabouts. She relocated to a new apartment in East Phoenix and switched to a different nightclub. There, she met Donald. Initially, Donald wasn't fond of Rebecca, but over time, Donald became deeply infatuated with her. He loved her so much that he was willing to welcome her and her 11-year-old son into his life. However, Donald's daughters disapproved of Rebecca, believing she had a negative effect on their father. Despite their concerns, Rebecca moved in with Donald in October 2003, and they married 2 years later. Everything seemed fine until 6 months later when problems began to emerge. Rebecca, now 36, developed an alcohol addiction. Influenced by her husband. Together, they drank continuously, neglecting meals. On July 31, 2012, around 10 p.m., a visibly intoxicated Rebecca called the police. She was slurring her speech and requested an ambulance for her husband, who she claimed was bleeding heavily. The police and paramedics quickly arrived at the scene to assist Donald but were taken aback by the situation. Rebecca sat calmly on the couch with a cigarette in her hand, while Donald lay bleeding on the floor beside her. As the paramedics worked on Donald, the police observed Rebecca with growing suspicion. Her apparent indifference to her husband's serious condition raised questions. They also noticed a gun protruding from beneath the pillows next to the dog and a bullet hole in the frame of her wedding portrait on the wall. In light of these findings, the police decided to take Rebecca into custody. When police questioned Rebecca about what happened, she claimed that she couldn't remember the details regarding Donald. She stated that she had just left her room when she saw him bleeding on the floor, and she immediately called 911. After answering a few more questions, she unexpectedly fell asleep during the interrogation. Donald died in the hospital a few hours later, prompting the police to start a murder investigation. Before detectives could proceed, Donald's daughters discovered that he had left a voicemail at 2:44 p.m. In the message, he asked them to call him back, and they heard a loud bang just as the message was sent. The daughters were shocked and confused when they learned of their father's death from the police. They were heartbroken to learn that these were their father's last words. After receiving their first lead, the police started investigating the crime scene and were taken aback to discover that CCTV cameras were monitoring the house. What shocked them even more was that the entire murder of Donald was captured on video. Rebecca was left alone with Donald after her son went to sleep at a friend's house. She picked up a gun and entered the living room while Donald was recording a voice message for his daughter. He was unaware of her presence until she fired the first shot. The bullet grazed his head and struck Rebecca's wedding portrait. In surprise and pain, he screamed and fell to the floor next to the couch. Rebecca returned to her room and changed into a t-shirt. She then returned to the living room and shot her husband, Donald, in the head. As blood poured across the room, she sat on the couch next to him as he died. She lit a cigarette and watched him bleed for 23 minutes before finally calling 911. The scene was so horrific that the footage was never made public. Surveillance videos clearly showed that it was a cold-blooded murder. When questioned, her story kept changing. Eventually, she claimed that Donald was planning to hire someone to kill her and make it look like a robbery gone wrong. On July 31st, while Donald was on the phone, Rebecca overheard the plan he was discussing. In a state of panic, she grabbed the gun, went into the living room, and fired, but she could not remember what happened after that. As police dug deeper into their story, they uncovered disturbing details about the couple's circumstances. Their home was filled with excessive drinking, creating an unhealthy atmosphere for raising children. The Rebecca expressed concern for her teenage son, who witnessed everything. Together, Donald and Rebecca were on a path of self-destruction, amassing not only alcohol but also a frightening collection of weapons. They seemed to drink constantly, leading to a concerning situation. Friends revealed that Donald had been controlling of Rebecca from the beginning of their relationship. He pressured her to quit her job at a strip club. He also frequently criticized and insulted her. He even forced Rebecca to get a tattoo of his name, claiming it was a way to mark her. In April 2006, after a night of drinking at a bar, Rebecca and Donald got into an argument that escalated into a physical fight. Donald began to violently beat Rebecca. A deputy sheriff from a neighboring county happened to witness the incident and decided to follow them, calling the police for assistance. The deputy reported seeing Rebecca trying to escape from Donald, who then approached her and struck her on the head. Rebecca fell to the ground, and Donald subsequently grabbed her and attempted to take her to a waiting taxi. At that moment, the police intervened and detained them. Rebecca had a bloody nose, scratches on her lips, and blood stains on her shirt. When the officer attempted to photograph her injuries, she turned away and gave him the middle finger. Although the officer witnessed the incident, Rebecca defended her husband, insisting that he had done nothing wrong and that she had simply tripped and fallen. She told the police they were wasting their time and that she would not leave him. Donald had a small cut on his cheek and around his right eye. He told the officer that he and Rebecca were having a normal conversation. He denied it was an argument, claiming she turned to face him and tripped, causing her face to hit his. Donald was arrested on assault charges but was released shortly afterward. He also denied any wrongdoing. In December 2006, police were called to the Donald home shortly after midnight by someone who reported a domestic dispute. The caller mentioned an argument between the couple, during which Donald broke a pool table and knocked it over. A witness noted that the couple frequently had arguments that became violent. When the officers arrived, they found the couple arguing in the dressing room. Donald was standing over her, yelling, while she sat on the floor in tears. Rebecca refused to explain why she was crying and even declined to give the police her name. She yelled at the officers to leave her house, which led to her arrest on suspicion of obstructing justice. By March 2011, the Donald had relocated to West Phoenix. The police arrived after someone triggered the alarm. Donald informed the police that his wife had injured her face. He was unsure who activated the alarm but suspected it was the dog. In the bedroom, the officers spoke with Rebecca, who gave her name. She looked at a female officer and whispered, "Help me." As is routine, the officers began asking questions to assess her situation. After a brief conversation, the officers concluded that Rebecca was in danger and arrested her husband on suspicion of domestic violence. When the officers told Rebecca that her husband had been arrested, she became angry and said, "You don't know what you just did to me," Rebecca cried. "He's going to kill me." The officers offered to take her to a relative's house or a shelter, but she refused. They left a domestic violence flyer on her bed before leaving. In the summer of 2012, Rebecca told her psychologist that her husband had become extremely paranoid and suspected that she was plotting against him. By that time, the Donald were living in a $400,000 home in the Willa area of downtown Phoenix. Rebecca mentioned that Donald had changed the locks, and only he had a key. She also noted that he had installed cameras throughout the house to monitor her. A subsequent investigation revealed that the surveillance camera system had been installed after their home had been burglarized, with cameras positioned both inside and outside the property. In late July 2012, Rebecca decided she wanted to leave her husband. She claimed he had broken her iPod, damaged her phone, and locked her inside the house. During a session with a psychologist, she expressed feeling trapped and hopeless. On the night of July 31, 2012, they hosted former neighbors with whom they had a good relationship. The neighbors noticed Rebecca was drinking heavily and voiced their concerns before leaving, which upset her husband. Rebecca claimed that she and her husband had argued that night. She said he threw her across the room, leaving her scared and having to reach for a weapon. The incident was not caught on surveillance cameras. However, police discovered footage that showed multiple instances of violence, both from Donald and sometimes from Rebecca. Their relationship was tumultuous, marked by intense emotions, conflict, and years of violent arguments. Surveillance cameras captured multiple instances of Donald pushing Rebecca to the ground, hitting her on the head, and occasionally choking her. On one occasion, he even grabbed her legs and threw her into the pool. After her arrest, Rebecca claimed she acted in self-defense. But it was clear that Rebecca had fired the shots. In a reduced sentence, Rebecca pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. During her trial, she admitted that she had been drinking that night and could not remember what happened afterward. While he lay bleeding, she sat and calmly smoked a cigarette. Moreover, the trial revealed undeniable evidence. A video of the incident was shown in court, leading the jury to convict Rebecca of first-degree murder. She received a life sentence in prison, with the possibility of parole in 20 years, making her eligible for release in 2032. After her sentence was announced, Rebecca expressed her sorrow. Rebecca was escorted out of the courtroom, trying to approach her son while repeatedly telling him that she loved him. She kept her eyes on her son until the door closed behind her. Custody of her son was granted to his maternal grandmother. The case of Brittany Gregory. Brittany Gregory was born on April 1, 1988 in Brigg, New Jersey, a small town. She is the youngest of 5 children, and her parents are divorced. She and her siblings live with their father. Brittany has a strong relationship with everyone, especially her sister Brianna, who is 4 years older than her. They have a special bond, often helping each other, exchanging clothes, and playing together. Brittany did very well in school. She was recognized as the top student in her class, and her teachers saw great potential in her, believing that she could become a scientist in the future. Despite her achievements, Brittany remained humble, cheerful, and kind. She often helped others and had many friends. Brittany harbored a unique desire to become a forensic scientist, motivated by her fascination with analyzing evidence at crime scenes. By the summer of 2004, 16-year-old Brittany and her 20-year-old older sister, Brianna, lived with their father, Joe Dana, and his new partner, Lori Peterson, in a small house near their school. Their home was the last house on the street, adjacent to a wooded area. At that time, Brittany was dating an 18-year-old named John Fitzgerald. They had been in a relationship for nearly 2 years, and John was well-liked by Brittany's family. On Sunday, July 11, 2004, Brianna and her mother traveled to Toms River to visit Brittany's brother, who needed help caring for his daughter. While they were gone, Brittany called her mother on her cell phone. Voice was very sad, as if something was wrong. Her mother explained that they were too far from home to take Brittany to John's house right away, but that Brianna could come and help her in an hour. Brittany disagreed with this plan. Brianna was free about 45 minutes later and tried calling Brittany, but younger sister did not answer. Thinking that Brittany might be asleep or had found another way to get a ride, Brianna decided to go to bed. The next morning, Brianna came home to find that Brittany was missing. Although Brittany's belongings, including her phone, were still in her room, Brianna wondered if she had stayed overnight at John's place. However, it didn't make sense for her to leave without telling anyone, especially without her phone. Worried, Brianna began calling all of Brittany's friends to see if they had seen her, but no one had any information. Brianna then called John, who said that he last spoke to Brittany on Sunday morning, and that she had not visited him since. Realizing that something was wrong, Brianna rushed to the police station to report Brittany missing. The police initially dismissed Brianna's concerns about younger sister, Brittany. They thought Brittany might have run away or was just hanging out with friends. Brianna told the police that she had already reached out to all of Brittany's friends and her boyfriend, but no one had seen her. She stressed that her sister wouldn't have run away because she was a dedicated student who preferred spending time in the library. After some convincing from Brianna, the police began to take the situation more seriously, and police started their investigation. Their first visit was to the father's house, where Brittany had last been seen, to look for clues. They found Brittany's purse, phone, and wallet still in her room, and everything seemed normal, no signs of struggle. Police also interviewed all family members living in the home and confirmed that each had an alibi. Posters featuring pictures of the Brittany were placed throughout the city as police began searching the area around her house and interviewing neighbors for information. They found that her house was at the end of the street, adjacent to a wooded area. Although none of the neighbors reported anything unusual that evening, one neighbor remembered seeing a girl resembling Brittany walking down the street late Friday night, 2 days before she went missing. Brianna told the police that Brittany and John had been having a difficult relationship, often arguing, and that they had another fight on the day she disappeared. Police brought John in for questioning, where he confidently claimed that the last time he spoke to Brittany was that morning before she went missing. John was at the beach with friends, and he was not enjoying himself. He mentioned that he had broken up with Brittany a few days earlier, but she was having trouble accepting it, even though she knew he was now dating someone else. John did not plan to see Brittany that evening and was unaware that she was coming to meet him. However, he shared an important detail. Brittany often took a path through the forest behind her father's house to visit him. When asked why he broke up with Brittany, John explained that she had kissed another guy at a party, which led him to end their relationship and start dating someone new. The last time he saw Brittany was on July 10th, the day before she disappeared. On that day, she gave him a letter in which she expressed a desire to reconcile. The police requested to see this letter, and John provided it to them. In the letter, Brittany apologized for her actions, acknowledged that she had hurt John, and asked if they could remain friends. John appeared genuinely worried and anxious about Brittany's disappearance. The police had no evidence against him and released him after he passed a background check and a polygraph test. Thereby, he was eliminated from the suspect list. Brittany's disappearance became increasingly puzzling. Contrary to her family's beliefs, she was not as shy as they thought. She attended parties, flirted with various guys, and would sometimes travel through the forest in the evenings to meet a guy who lived about 1.5 kilometers away. This raised concerns about what could have happened to her in the forest. Search efforts began there, focusing on a bike path that started near her house and led to the John's place. Despite searching for 3 days, no signs of her were found. The investigation hit a wall until a woman came forward. She had been in the park with her boyfriend that evening and remembered one vehicle avalanche pickup with distinctive wheels. That passed by. She noted the license plate, and police traced the vehicle to a 23-year-old man named Anthony Geiger. When they investigated Anthony, they discovered that he was the ex-boyfriend of Brittany's older sister Bobby. They had ended their relationship a month earlier because he was jealous and made suspiciously friendly gestures toward Brittany. Brittany's friends noticed that at parties, Anthony often looked at her in a strange way and attempted to flirt with her. The last time they all gathered was for dinner, where Anthony flirted with Brittany again. This behavior raised suspicions, who thought he might have tracked down and kidnapped her. They brought him in for questioning. Anthony denied being near the woods on the evening of July 11th, but he admitted that he had a friendship with Brittany and had seen her frequently at parties and other gatherings. However, he denied his friend's claims that he had flirted with her, saying that Brittany was too nice for him and that he only saw her as a friend. He insisted that he had an alibi, saying that he had spent that evening at home with a new girlfriend. The girlfriend was contacted by police and she confirmed Anthony's alibi. With no substantial evidence against him, the police released Anthony. Police reviewed Brittany's letter to John and discovered disturbing notes in her breakup text messages. They began to worry that she might harm herself because of her breakup with her boyfriend. Brittany's parents, upon hearing this theory, firmly rejected the idea that their intelligent, ambitious daughter would take her end one's own life. They believed that she loved life too much and had made important plans for her future that a breakup would not derail. The investigation hit another dead end, prompting police to reach out to the public through the media in the hope of finding potential witnesses. Police from surrounding areas joined the effort and began searching the house where Brittany went missing. Brittany's parents decided it was time to take action to find their daughter. They began by visiting nearby homes and asking locals for information, but their efforts yielded no results. During a thorough search, the police discovered something interesting in the house, a letter hidden in a magazine. In the letter, Brittany expressed her desire to enter a competition. She revealed that she came from a troubled family. Her mother was a drug addict who abandoned her when she was 9 years old. She now lived with her father and his partner, and their relationship was strained. In addition, her brother was in prison, and she visited him every weekend. She mentioned that she wasn't perfect, but she had a kind heart and wanted to be different from her parents. She was determined to create a better life for herself and dreamed of becoming a criminologist to help solve crimes. After the police read her letter, they identified new suspects, the Brittany family, who had not been considered before. The police started investigating all the members of the Brittany family, discovering that in the house where there was a massage parlor for men. The massage parlor is run by Lauren Peterson, Brittany's father's second wife. The house received daily visits from various men for private meetings, and the woman regularly saw clients. It appeared that the entire neighborhood was aware of this, and Lauren openly embraced her profession, handing out business cards widely. Neighbors reported witnessing illegal substances at her residence, raising suspicions that Lauren might also be involved in drug distribution. Police realized the teenager's disappearance was not coincidental. Something serious had occurred, indicating she was in danger. It was possible that one of Lauren's clients could have abducted Brittany from the house. The police began checking Lauren's clients and discovered many unusual people among them. Soon, the news reported that the police had arrested a suspect in Brittany's murder. The mother of the Brittany recognized him as 38-year-old Jack Fuller, who had been a family friend. For 20 years, he attended all their family vacations and kept in close contact with them. His daughter was engaged to Brittany's brother, who was in prison. Brittany's mother was shocked when she heard the news. They couldn't believe that Jack could be involved. He was friendly and his teenage children were friends with Brittany. Brittany had saved Jack's life a few months before she went missing. When she went to visit his daughter, she found Jack not breathing. Brittany called 911 and the responders were able to revive him after he overdosed. How could he hurt the person who saved him? The parents knew that Jack was involved in drug use and distribution. Jack had 48 previous convictions for drug possession and trafficking. His most recent sentence was 5.5 years in prison, and he had been on parole during the time Brittany went missing. They speculated that he may have stolen money to buy drugs, but questioned why he would target their daughter. They thought he may have taken her ring or necklace. Police then tracked him down. They received information about Jack from a caller who said that Jack had complained of back pain because he had buried the body of the girl he had killed in sandy soil. Jack reportedly told the caller at the burial site would not be discovered and asked for advice on how deep to bury the body to prevent animals from finding it. The police invited the informant to the station to meet with Jack and record a conversation about the murder. The informant agreed and met Jack, successfully recording him saying he buried the body deep in the wilderness, making it unlikely to be found. Jack confessed to killing Brittany because she recognized him but did not provide further details. He also mentioned that he needed to eliminate someone else who knew too much, referring to his childhood friend Tommy, who was waiting in a car. However, at the end of their conversation, Jack claimed he was joking before getting into the car and leaving with Tommy. The police arrived at Tommy's house and took him to the station for questioning. Although Tommy insisted he didn't know anything, they showed him a recording of Jack expressing his desire to kill his friend. This made Tommy realize he was in danger and that it was wiser to report Jack. He then revealed everything he knew. On the night Brittany went missing, Tommy and Jack were driving around the neighborhood while smoking marijuana. They were near Brittany's house, and Jack decided to visit her father. He approached the house and found the door unlocked. Upon entering, he realized that Brittany's father was not home. 5 minutes later, Jack returned to the car with Brittany. When Tommy asked what happened, Brittany looked down and did not answer. Jack told Tommy that Jack would drive him home. After dropping his friend off, Jack left with Brittany. The next day, Tommy met Jack but did not mention the events of the previous day. They stopped at a car wash where Jack meticulously washed his car, inside and out, even though he had never done this before. The car wash attendant jokingly asked him why he washed his car so thoroughly, which angered Jack, causing him to tell them to mind their own business or they might regret it. The attendant quickly backed off. Tommy learns of Brittany's disappearance, confronts Jack, and asks, "What did you do with that girl?" Jack is angry and insists that he knows nothing, claiming that he just took her home and left. Tommy suspects that Jack took Brittany into the woods that night with the intention of causing harm, especially since Jack had planned to use Lori's services that night, but Lori was not home. The police identify Jack as the prime suspect. When they come to arrest him, he tries to burn his car. The police suspect that evidence may be found in the car and conduct a thorough search. Brittany's blood was found in Jack's car. Police later went to the car wash and found that Jack had used a vacuum cleaner to clean the inside of the car. Police collected the vacuum cleaner bag for testing and found a large amount of sand and blood. Testing confirmed that the blood was Brittany's. Despite this evidence, Jack did not admit to kidnapping or killing Brittany and refused to discuss the matter. Police interviewed Jack's friends and acquaintances, most of whom believed he was capable of murder. Many described him as someone who would do anything to get what he wanted. Jack never held a job but always had money. He was involved in drug trafficking and forced drug addicts to provide sexual services in exchange for drugs. After Brittany went missing, a patrol officer stopped Jack when he saw Jack's car parked in a remote area near the woods outside the city. The officer asked Jack why he was there, and he said he was looking for his lost dog. The search for Brittany's body focused on the location, involving police, helicopters, and volunteers, but they found nothing. Police believe Brittany asked Jack to drive her to her boyfriend's house, but unfortunately, he took advantage of the situation and attacked and killed Brittany. A woman later contacted the police, saying she had information about where Brittany's body could be found. The woman had been held captive by Jack for several months while she struggled with drug addiction and was forced to comply with his demands. During this time, she got to know him well and learned all his secrets, including his routines and the places he frequented. He often took her along to these locations. One day, he pointed out a spot and mentioned it would be a good place to bury a body since no one would discover it there. Initially, the police were skeptical of her claims and asked her for more details. She was able to specify the location and noted that the soil there was sandy. Police recalled, an informant had previously mentioned Jack's complaints about the challenges of burying a body in sandy soil. The woman's information was credible, prompting them to investigate the area she identified. The search area was large, and several days passed without any results. Then, specialists compared sand collected from a vacuum cleaner with the local soil and found an exact match, prompting them to continue the search. On July 27, 2004, the dogs led them to an area with much less vegetation, where they suspected a body might be buried. They used a long stick to probe the ground, and when they pulled it out, it carried the smell of decomposing flesh. The body in the pit was that of a young girl. She was wearing a necklace with the name Brittany on it. The medical examiner confirmed that the body belonged to Brittany Gregory. Could not determine the exact cause of death due to the condition of the body, which showed signs of strangulation and severe head trauma from a blunt object. While there were no clear signs of sexual assault, it could not be completely ruled out. Jack consulted with a lawyer and chose to negotiate a plea bargain with the prosecution to reduce his sentence. The family agreed to this arrangement to avoid a lengthy trial. Brittany's mother expressed that she did not want the death penalty for Jack, believing it would be too easy for him. Instead, she wished for him to serve a life sentence in prison, enduring the consequences of his actions. Jack mentioned that Brittany asked him for a ride to see her boyfriend, and he agreed. He took his friend Tommy along and left with Brittany. However, they stopped, and Jack began smoking weed in front of her, which angered Brittany. She yelled at him and hit his hands. In response, Jack became violent and punched Brittany in the face, only stopping when she stopped moving. Realizing she was dead, he buried her, but no one believed his account of what happened. The forensic report revealed that Brittany had been strangled and suffered a severe head injury. The prosecution argued that the crime was sexually motivated. Ultimately, Jack was convicted and received a 30-year prison sentence without the possibility of parole. The case of Farquharson family. At around 8 p.m. on September 4, 2005, a man emerged from the water near Lake Victoria in Australia, soaked and distressed. He flagged down a passing car, desperately seeking help. The man said that the car he was in, carrying 3 children, had crashed into a fence and fallen into the water. The man was later identified as Robert Farquharson, the children's father. Inside the submerged car were his 2-year-old son Bailey, 7-year-old Tyler, and 10-year-old Jai. Robert asked the driver to take him to the children's mother, who lived 8 kilometers from the lake. The driver complied and called emergency services at 000 to report the accident during the journey. As word spread, people flocked to the scene and some even dove into the water, hoping to rescue the children, but their efforts were futile. The car remained submerged and unreachable. Eventually, police, medical personnel, and rescuers arrived to assist. Robert explained to the police that while he had managed to escape the sinking car, he was unable to free the children, prompting him to seek help. His mobile phone had malfunctioned due to water damage, forcing him to stop a passing car for assistance. The search and rescue operation faced challenges due to darkness, and Robert could not pinpoint where the car had gone underwater. Although the water was cold, the divers continued their search for the car, aiming to help the children trapped inside. Time was critical, as the chances of survival diminished rapidly. It was essential to act quickly before the car filled with water. Around 2 a.m., divers recovered the bodies of the 3 children from the water. The car was about 30 meters from shore, submerged at a depth of 7.5 meters. Inside, the children were desperately trying to escape. They unbuckled their seatbelts, but tragically, they were unable to escape. Jai's body was found in the front door, while Tyler and Bailey were still in the back seat. Cindy, the boy's mother, was in shock after losing 3 sons in a flash. She was hospitalized and given sedatives to help her cope with her grief. Meanwhile, Robert was also hospitalized with hypothermia and minor injuries. The Farquharsons were well regarded in the community and were considered a model family. Cindy and Robert met in 1990. They welcomed their first child, Jai, in late 1994, their second, Tyler, in 1998, and eventually married in 2000. Bailey, their third child, was born 2 years later. Jai, the oldest brother, aspired to be a fireman or rescuer. On the day of the tragedy, he helped his younger brothers unbuckle their belts in an attempt to save everyone, but unfortunately, he was unable to do so. Tyler, the middle brother, is known for his playful and prankish nature, while the youngest, Bailey, is only 2 years old and is very attached to his brothers. The boys' parents had divorced several years before the tragedy. The children lived with Cindy, but Robert visited regularly and maintained open communication with them. The tragic day was also Father's Day, and the boys spent time with their father. Cindy gave Robert a set of pots and a framed photo of his sons as gifts for the occasion. Robert took the children to KFC for lunch, then they stopped at a store to buy a new baseball bat before going to their mother's house. On the way, an accident occurred. After recovering, Robert was questioned by the police. He claimed he was not speeding, but during the drive, he had a severe coughing fit that caused him to lose control of the car. The car crashed into a fence and ended up in the water, sliding several meters before starting to sink. The children in the car were screaming. Robert managed to surface to call for help and intended to go back to rescue the children, but he was unable to do so. A toxicology report found that Robert had not consumed alcohol or used illegal drugs on the day of the incident. He had just recovered from the flu and was suffering from a severe cough. Although the incident was ruled an accident, the police needed to conduct a thorough investigation. A memorial was set up on the shore of the lake, where people brought flowers, candles, and toys in memory of the children. Robert felt guilty about the accident and sought forgiveness from his ex-wife. He expressed that he tried his best to save the children but was unable to do so. His family members supported him during this difficult time, and Cindy defended Robert, believing in his innocence. She accepted that the children's deaths were a tragic accident. Forensic experts at the accident scene were puzzled by the absence of skid marks or braking marks on the road, which were expected to be present. They later found that when the car was discovered, its ignition and headlights were off, and the rear doors were locked. This raised questions. How could this have happened? Could it be that the father intentionally did this instead of trying to save his children? On September 11th, Cindy and Robert were released from the hospital and were able to hold a burial for their boys. Approximately 600 people attended the ceremony, with nearly the entire community coming to offer their condolences. The local residents who supported the family during this tragic time were also mourning alongside the heartbroken parents, who were struggling to cope. Robert's car was taken for inspection to check its overall functionality, especially the brakes and steering system. There might have been a technical issue that caused the brakes to fail. Police continued their work at the lake, trying to piece together how the incident occurred and why, with the goal of making the area safer. They attempted to recreate the events using the same car, but their efforts were unsuccessful. The steering wheel did not turn far enough to the right for the car to slide into the lake. This led police to question Robert's account, and he was asked to come to the police station for further questioning. He repeated the same story but couldn't clearly explain why the car's ignition, heating, and headlights were off. There were no signs of skidding or braking on the road. Police offered him a lie detector test, which Robert agreed to, but he failed. Experts determined that reaching the water would require turning the steering wheel sharply to the right by 220 degrees. If Robert had merely lost control due to coughing, he wouldn't have made such a sudden turn. He would have just gone off the road and not into the water. All checks on the car showed it was in perfect working condition, with no issues with the brakes, steering, headlights, or ignition. Therefore, police believed the actions were deliberate. The case was referred to the Homicide Division, and a detailed investigation began. An autopsy on the boys revealed they drowned, but their bodies had numerous abrasions and bruises, suggesting they may have been injured before their deaths. 3 months later, Robert was arrested and charged with the murder of the boys. He was shocked by the accusations and insisted that he was innocent, claiming that it was a tragic accident. Soon after, a witness came forward, one of Robert's friends, who revealed that just days before the incident, Robert had expressed his desire to harm his children then end his life as an act of revenge against his ex-wife. Because after the divorce Cindy got everything. A nice house, a luxury car, money, and even she started dating another man and seemed happy, with plans to remarry. Robert was jealous of her, but at the time his friend did not believe he would do it. Robert later confessed to this friend that he had deliberately drowned their children as an act of revenge against his ex-wife. He was released on $200,000 bail before the trial because the judge considered the incident an accident and decided that he did not pose a threat to society. As part of his bail conditions, Robert was required to stay home and wear a tracking bracelet. The trial began in August 2007. During the trial, Robert's ex-wife Cindy expressed her belief that he did not intentionally kill their children. She characterized him as a devoted family man. Cindy found it hard to comprehend why Robert would harm their children, even if he were upset with her. However, she acknowledged that Robert had been unhappy with her new relationship and had previously said he wouldn't let the children live with her new partner or pay alimony. Cindy firmly believed that the incident was an accident. She recalled suggesting to Robert that he spend Father's Day with the children. She sent her sons off at 3 p.m., and their father picked them up, with the expectation that they would return home by 7:30 p.m. Around 8 p.m., she was shocked to find a soaked and frantic Robert at her door. After learning about the accident, Cindy's new partner, Stephen, quickly drove to the lake. He began diving in, searching for the car to rescue the children. Robert, accompanied by his lawyer, maintained that it was an accident. A local resident who was near the lake that day testified at the trial about Robert's behavior while he waited for the boys to be rescued. The witness noted that Robert seemed more focused on finding a cigarette than on his children, which surprised him. When asked why he wasn't more worried about his children, Robert did not respond and did not attempt to dive into the water to save them. Another driver who stopped to help also provided testimony. He noted that Robert did not ask him to call for help but instead wanted a ride to see his wife. By that time, Robert appeared to have accepted that the children were dead. The driver was confused because Robert wanted to see his wife instead of seeking help for the children. Although confused, the driver took Robert with him and gave him a phone to call for help. However, Robert refused, saying that it was too late and the children were dead. The driver later felt that Robert might be mentally unstable. Regretting his decision to follow Robert's wishes, the driver called the emergency services himself, wishing he had done more to save the children. A nearby police officer commented on Robert's lack of emotion, saying that he did not act like a father who had just lost 3 sons. In contrast, the children's mother appeared very confused, pulling her hair, crying and begging for help, while Robert was barely responsive. Cindy and Stephen, her new partner, joined the rescuers to help, while Robert didn't mention his cough, which he claimed had led to his loss of control, until 11 days later. During the trial, the doctor who treated Robert confirmed that Robert was indeed ill. Robert was coughing a lot and felt weak and lethargic. However, the doctor believed that the cough would not have caused Robert to turn the wheel so suddenly. After the divorce, Robert suffered from depression, mental instability, and personality disorder. He regularly saw a psychiatrist. On the morning before the tragedy, Robert told the psychiatrist that he had forgotten to take his antidepressants. The prosecution presented evidence that there were no skid marks or brake marks on the road, and that the back door was locked and the headlights were off, which could not have happened accidentally. The prosecution argued that Robert had tried to kill the children out of revenge against Cindy, primarily because he wanted to avoid paying her child support. The jury found these arguments convincing, and on October 5, 2007, they found Robert Farquharson guilty. He was sentenced to the maximum sentence of 3 life terms without the possibility of parole. In sentencing, the judge stated that Robert's actions had destroyed his entire family in revenge against Cindy and had also ruined his own life. Cindy, the children's mother, fainted after hearing the verdict and had to be rushed to the hospital because she did not expect the verdict to be like that. After the trial, she was very confused by the experts' opinions. That Robert had intentionally killed the children to get revenge on her. Cindy wanted to visit Robert in prison to understand the truth of what happened, but he refused to see her. Cindy sued her ex-husband, Robert, for pain and suffering as well as for the death of their 3 children. As a result, Robert was found guilty and ordered to pay her 225,000 Australian dollars. Later, it was discovered that the friend who testified against Robert during the trial had a history of violence and multiple convictions, which raised doubts about his credibility. With this new information, Robert and his lawyer filed an appeal, which was accepted on December 17, 2009. Robert was released on bail of 200,000 Australian dollars on December 21st. Due to errors in the judicial process, a new trial was scheduled, beginning in May 2010. During the trial, a new witness testified, a woman who said she was driving behind Robert's car near the lake. She described the car as moving at a normal speed before it suddenly swerved to the right multiple times. Inside the car, she saw 3 children, and she noted that Robert was purposefully guiding his boys toward the water. He did not attempt to brake or change direction. Most notably, Robert remained calm and did not cough while sitting behind the wheel. The woman drove away quickly and did not realize that Robert had driven his car into the water. She thought he would simply stop by the lake. She later learned about the tragedy on TV the next day and came to understand that Robert had intentionally drowned his children. She had been unable to contact anyone sooner because she was receiving cancer treatment in the hospital. After witness testimony, Cindy developed a deep hatred for Robert, believing that he had intentionally taken the lives of her children. She was convinced of his guilt and asked the court to sentence him to life in prison, ensuring that he would spend the rest of his life in prison. Cindy had Robert's name removed from her children's records and from their gravestones. On July 22, 2010, the jury again found Robert guilty and he was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole. In 2010, Cindy married Stephen and they had 2 sons together. Sadly, Cindy passed away in May 2022 at the age of 50. Robert remains in prison, serving his sentence. The case of Amanda Perot. On February 3, 2020, Seth Perot called his boss, the sheriff, to report a tragic incident at his home. His wife had died and he needed help. When the police arrived, Seth had just gotten out of the shower. Inside the bedroom, they discovered the body of 44-year-old Amanda on the bed, shot in the head. Initially, the scene appeared to match Seth's description on the phone. Then forensic experts began combing the area and collecting evidence. Seth was taken to the police station to give a statement. He said that he and his wife, Amanda, were lying in bed when they got into an argument. During the argument, Amanda suddenly pulled out a gun and shot herself in the head. Seth said that he had no time to react and stop her. When questioned by police, he described their day before the tragedy. They had dropped their children off at school and had not been anywhere else until the incident. Seth appeared extremely upset, almost in tears, expressing regret for losing the woman he loved more than anything after 8 happy years together. Initially, Seth said he had not touched Amanda. However, he later said he had hugged her several times after the shooting. He struggled to remember whether he had touched the gun and repeatedly claimed that he was a good cop. The police asked him more questions, leading to increasing doubts about his credibility. They knew that Seth, who had come from another police department, had a bad reputation and was known for aggressive behavior at work. When Amanda's relatives heard about the tragedy, They rushed to the house and informed the police that Amanda would never act in such a way or leave her children with an abusive husband. They were convinced that Seth had killed Amanda and urged the police to investigate the possibility. Meanwhile, forensic experts thoroughly examined the crime scene and concluded that it was a homicide. Their findings were supported by the location of the body and the gun. A .380 caliber Smith & Wesson was discovered nearby, with a discarded magazine found next to her right side. A bullet was found in the chamber of the semi-automatic pistol. When the gun is fired, the spent cartridge case is ejected, and a new cartridge is loaded. Because there was a bullet in the chamber, the magazine should have been removed after the shot was fired. If the gun was functioning properly, the magazine could only be ejected by pressing a button, which would have had to be done after the shot. However, if the Amanda died immediately, who pressed the button? The weapon was tested and found to have no faults. Additionally, there was no blood on Amanda's hands or on the long sleeves of her shirt. The bedroom contained 20 miniature whiskey bottles, and there were no signs of forced entry or any intruders. The primary suspect was the Seth. He was a police officer trained to use a gun, and the murder was carried out with his service weapon. Police began investigating the couple's relationship more closely and discovered some interesting details. Amanda Perot was born in 1975 in Lawrenceville, Georgia, a small town with a population of about 29,000. Relatives described her as a cheerful and kind person, always willing to help others and devoted to her family. The Amanda had 2 children from her first marriage, which ended in a difficult divorce due to her ex-husband's abusive behavior. Amanda struggled to escape this toxic relationship. In 2011, after her divorce, Amanda met Seth online. At that time, Seth was seriously ill with cancer, unemployed, and living with his parents, who were supporting him financially. He loved communicating online, and when he discovered Amanda's profile, he felt intrigued. He contacted her and they started chatting. To Amanda, Seth seemed like the complete opposite of her ex-husband. He was sweet, polite, and kind. As their conversations continued, Amanda and Seth grew close and started considering a face-to-face meeting. Eventually, Seth's health improved, and his cancer went into remission. He invited Amanda to meet in person. And their date went well. They instantly liked each other and began dating. During this time, Amanda learns that Seth has a daughter from a previous marriage who lives with mother, and he is determined to fight for custody of the child. Amanda moved in with Seth's parents along with. They were pleased that Seth had finally found a partner and believed everything was going well. Amanda took on the responsibility of caring for Seth, which led her to drift away from her own family. 2 of her sisters noted that after the move, Amanda dedicated herself entirely to looking after Seth. She also worked and took care of her children, leaving her little time to connect with family and friends. It was a challenging period for Amanda, but she never complained. Seth insisted that Amanda quit her job to be with him all the time, and his fairly wealthy parents supported this decision. Over time, Amanda's relatives lost touch with her. She stopped attending family gatherings, missing Christmas and Thanksgiving. She also ceased to personally congratulate her relatives on their birthdays, choosing instead to do so only by phone. Amanda became focused entirely on Seth and the children, celebrating all holidays with his family. Seth then took Amanda's cell phone, saying she didn't need it because she was always home with him. Amanda didn't have a phone, so her family couldn't contact her. Seth controlled every aspect of Amanda's life and wouldn't let her leave the house alone. After 5 years together, Seth and Amanda secretly married on June 23, 2017. Only their children attended the wedding. They didn't invite anyone else or tell anyone about this important moment in Amanda's life. Many believe that Seth married Amanda primarily for his own interests. He was determined to gain custody of his daughter from his ex-wife, and to do this, he needed to formalize his relationship with Amanda. Many thought this was his true motivation for marrying her. Without this goal, he might not have married at all. Although Seth appeared happy with Amanda, he had complete control over her and was very persistent in getting his way. He spent months in court fighting for custody of his daughter. Eventually, he was successful and won full custody of his daughter, after which Seth took his daughter to live with them. Amanda had no say in family decisions and was completely submissive to his decisions. In 2018, Seth's father purchased a beautiful house for them near the lake, and the family moved in. Amanda remained a housewife, as Seth did not allow her to work. A year later, Seth secured a job as a patrolman with the Tenton Police Department. After Seth started his job, his relationship with Amanda deteriorated. He began drinking excessively after work. One night, he fell down the stairs while drunk and got hurt. This led him to misuse painkillers along with alcohol, causing him to become extremely irritable and aggressive. He often threatened Amanda physically. On January 28, 2020, after suffering another attack from her husband, Amanda escaped to a neighbor's house and called 911 for help. When the police arrived, Amanda showed them the bruises from the abuse. Their 3 children confirmed her story. Seth's 8-year-old daughter reported that she had heard screams and seen her father pushing and hitting Amanda. Terrified, she had hidden in the closet to avoid the violence. After Amanda fled, Seth discovered the children hiding and forced them to come out. They obeyed but were very frightened of him. Seth was then arrested and charged that evening. Amanda called her sister, asking for a ride the next morning because she was afraid to stay home, knowing that her husband would be released soon. The next morning, Seth was released on $1,500 bail and returned home. Amanda later called her sister back saying that she didn't need to come anymore because everything was fine. However, her sister was shocked, realizing how dangerous Seth was to Amanda and the children. She couldn't understand why Amanda continued to forgive him. Amanda's sister came to her house and tried to convince her to leave with the children and divorce Seth. Amanda was against this idea. Her sister then left. Seth was temporarily suspended during the investigation into allegations of domestic violence and child abuse. Amanda took part in the hearings related to Seth's case. When the judge asked if she wanted a restraining order against him, she declined, saying she had forgiven him. As a result, Seth was released, and they went home together. Just 5 days later, on February 3, 2020, Amanda was found dead. Police, after reviewing a history of conflict and domestic violence, concluded that Amanda's death was not an accident. They suspected Seth of shooting her. During questioning, Seth maintained his innocence, claiming that their argument was due to recent allegations of domestic violence. During the argument, she pulled out a gun and shot herself. The police questioned how Amanda could have accessed Seth's gun, given his strict nature and the control he had over her. Police later found a handwritten note on Amanda's nightstand in which she praised her husband and described his great character. In the note, she wrote, "Amanda Perot wants to retract her statement. Her husband has never raised a hand to hit her. She feels very bad for the humiliation she has caused him. She is willing to accept any punishment she deserves for her actions." However, Amanda's sister does not believe that Amanda would write such things about her husband. The handwriting on the note appears to be different from Amanda's usual style, raising concerns that she may not have written it herself, or that she wrote it under pressure or at the behest of her husband. Therefore, the handwriting appears unusual. Seth has a hard time explaining the bruises on Amanda's body. Police suspect that he coerced her into writing the letter to make her death appear voluntary, in an attempt to escape guilt. The investigation is ongoing, with police believing Seth shot his wife and actively gathering evidence against him. They have interviewed the couple's friends and family to uncover more about the history of domestic violence in their relationship. Neighbors reported hearing screams from the couple's house almost daily and often saw Seth intoxicated. The community was aware that the couple frequently argued, with Seth being the aggressor when he drank. Amanda, on the other hand, appeared to be a quiet and modest person, and neighbors never saw her drinking. There were multiple instances where neighbors witnessed Seth dragging Amanda by her hair in their driveway. Although they felt sympathy for her, no one called the police out of fear of Seth, who was a police officer himself. On the day Amanda died, the neighborhood was unusually quiet. There were no sounds coming from the house. The only witness to the events was Seth, whose testimony was not trusted during the investigation. It was revealed that just 20 minutes before Seth's call, a deputy police officer had shown up at their door with a summons for domestic violence. Video from the doorbell camera showed the officer approaching, introducing himself, and waiting for someone to answer. Although Seth heard noises inside, no one answered. The deputy police officer were puzzled by Seth's behavior, knowing that Seth was a police officer who knew the procedures. Seth only needed to hand over some documents, so the deputy police officer wondered why he was hiding and refusing to open the door. Initially, the deputy police officer thought that Seth might not be fully clothed, which could explain the lack of response. He turned his back to the door and asked Seth to simply hand over the documents without looking inside, but still no one responded. This was unusual. After waiting another 7 minutes, the deputy police officer left. They later speculated that when Seth saw the police at the door, he became frightened. Apparently, a shot was fired just before the deputy police officer arrived. After the deputy left, he took a few minutes to calm down and then called his sheriff on his cell phone. Police later discovered that Seth had lied about not leaving the house on the day of the murder. Police reviewed surveillance cameras from the area and the couple's bank card transactions, finding that they had gone to a store 10 miles from their home that day and purchased 20 bottles of liquor. More importantly, the cameras recorded what the Seth was wearing, a Pink Floyd t-shirt and black sweatpants. 4 hours later, when police arrived at the Peralt's home, Seth was wearing different clothes. A plain black t-shirt and the clothes he had worn to the store were found in a washing machine, which had been turned off. In addition, Seth was still wet from his shower. Police suspected that he may have tried to wash off gunpowder residue and blood that may have gotten on him during the shooting, but he had not started the washing cycle. A small smear of Amanda's blood was later found on his pants, and traces of gunpowder were discovered on Seth's left hand. Based on this evidence, the investigation resumed just 2 days after the tragedy on February 5 in 2020. Seth was arrested for the murder of Amanda Perot. He denied any involvement in her death and also refuted allegations of domestic violence. The couple's 3 children were interviewed by child psychologists, and all 3 reported that Seth frequently abused their mother in front of them. The day before Amanda's death, she urged the children not to speak to the police, warning them that Seth might lose custody of their daughter and could retaliate violently. The children lived in constant fear of him. Their testimonies were presented as evidence during the trial. Seth's daughter requested to move in with her mother, and this request was granted, while Amanda's other children stayed with her sister throughout the trial. On August 21, 2020, something unexpected occurred. The autopsy report was released. The state medical examiner concluded that Amanda Perot had shot herself, citing the absence of struggle signs and the burns on her skin from the gunshot. This finding shocked the prosecution, who disagreed with the forensic expert's assessment. The trial began on November 3, 2020, with the prosecution presenting all the evidence that Seth was guilty: gunpowder residue on his hands, blood on his unwashed clothes, discrepancies in the placement of Amanda's body in the gun, and most importantly, Seth's motive for killing his wife. Despite this evidence, Seth maintained his innocence. His attorney argued that changing clothes and showering were not important. Seth simply chose to shower during the day and made no attempt to hide anything. The blood stain may have been from a previous incident where Amanda accidentally hurt herself. However, the presence of gunpowder on Seth's hands was unexplained. It was suggested he might have gotten it while at the police station. The lawyer pointed out that even the state medical examiner concluded Amanda shot herself, as there were no clear signs of a struggle. While burns on her body indicated she was shot from a close distance, the prosecutor claimed that Seth had given her alcohol and drugs, preventing her from defending herself. Amanda's phone had photos of her with a bruise under her eye and a split lip, as well as videos of her husband threatening her, which she had recorded secretly. In a message to her sisters, Amanda said, "Seth just choked she until I almost lost consciousness. He split she lip." The prosecutor noted that a gun magazine was found next to her right hand, while a firearm with a loaded cartridge was located about 1.5 meters away against the wall and ceiling. Blood was also found on the bedspread, with 2 cartridges present, suggesting that the crime scene had been staged. This was in contrast to Seth's claim that he had not touched or moved the body or the gun. The sister of the Amanda testified in court that Amanda had told her just days before the tragedy that if anything happened to her, it would be at the hands of her husband. Police chief reported that when he received the call about Amanda's death, Seth initially mumbled something incoherent before suddenly screaming. Only after he calmed down was he able to explain what had happened. Additionally, Seth's cellmate testified during the trial, claiming that Seth confessed to him about killing his wife. He described how Seth had given Amanda alcohol, sedatives, and painkillers on the day she died, which caused her to lose consciousness, after which he shot her. A toxicology report confirmed that Amanda had high levels of alcohol and drugs in her system at the time of her death. On February 25, 2022, after 2.5 hours of deliberation, the jury found Seth Perot, 45, guilty of murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Seth's lawyers were furious with the verdict, claiming that there was no direct evidence to prove his guilt. Following the verdict, Seth Perot's new legal team filed its first appeal, which was denied.